23, a bill by the Senate Majority Leader is a bill that is at its second reading stage, and it is lined up to resume debate this afternoon after it was interrupted on the 16th of May, the year 2024. The stage at which this bill is at the second reading is division. This means that debate was concluded, and a division is for the bill to be read for the second time. This is a bill that seeks to put in place a legislative framework to regulate the meteorological services in Kenya and to coordinate and monitor meteorological services. According to the bill, is that there be established a Kenya Meteorological Service Authority, which shall be responsible for the provision, regulation, coordination, and management of meteorological services. Also, the functions of the authority would include establishment and maintenance of surface, upper air, and marine meteorological observation networks, establishment and maintenance of integrated information systems for the exchange of meteorological data and products, data processing and archival, forecasting, product dissemination, including provision of aeronautical meteorological services for the safety, regularity, and efficiency of international air navigation. The bill also provides for the establishment of Meteorological Training and Research Directorate that shall be the successor of the Institute of Meteorological Training and Research, commonly referred to as IMTR, and the designated World Meteorological Organization Regional Training Center for the provision of diploma, certificate, professional courses in meteorological operation, hydrology, and related sciences. This is a bill that will go into division this afternoon for it to be read for the second time and proceed into the next stage. The Houses of Parliament Bicameral Relations Bill. This is a bill that is originating from the National Assembly and co-sponsored by the Senate Majority Leader. Debate on this bill already kicked off on the floor of the House, and this afternoon debate on it is set to resume. It was interrupted on Thursday of 9th May, the year 2024, and this afternoon members who have not gotten an opportunity to give their input into the contents of this bill will have a chance to do that. That is the Deputy Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Kathuri Murungi, walking into the chambers. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good afternoon.
Atuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, twakusihi tutazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Twakuomba utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yakatufikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao azazo umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amina. Can I confirm whether we have quorum? My eyes cannot be able to see nicely. Ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
as provided for in the House Standing Order number 39 and 40, that at the commencement of the House business, there shall be 15 members inside the chambers. And after the prayer is said and the chair taken, if that quorum is not present, then that will necessitate a quorum bell of 10 minutes. This is, of course, to give room to the members of the Senate who may be within the precincts of Parliament, but yet to make their way to the chambers to do just that. As you can see, a few members, or rather just a few members, are in the chambers. They are not yet 15, but that bell should be able to alert them that their presence is highly required inside the chambers. And as the bell is on, then we will be seeing the members getting into the chambers. Once that number is achieved, I will directly hand you over to these live proceedings. But back to the business onto which the members of the Senate will be transacting this afternoon. As indicated earlier, is that 3 bills on their second reading stage, at which debate had already started. The meteorological bill, Senate Bill number 45 of 2023, debate on it is concluded, and this afternoon there will be division on whether the bill be read for the second time. That is the Senator for Mombasa County, Mohamed Faki, who has walked in. The Houses of Parliament, a bicameral relations bill. This is a bill that is originating from the National Assembly, Bill number 44 of 2023, and co-sponsored by the Senate Majority Leader. On this bill, a debate has been on the floor of the House. That is Vihiga Senator and Embu Senator there walking in. Debate on this bill has been on the floor of the House, rather that is Kitui Senate, I beg your pardon. So the debate on the Houses of Parliament bicameral relations bill, a bill originating from the National Assembly, has been on the floor of the House, but was interrupted on the Thursday of 9th May, the year 2024. And this afternoon it is set to have that debate resume with the members who may have not been able to give in their views and opinions on the contents of the bill to get a chance to do that. This is a bill that seeks to provide for a framework for determining the nature of a bill. Remember, bills at the Parliament originate from either the National Assembly or the Senate, being a bicameral house. And this bill includes to provide a framework for determining the nature of a bill, defines the bill that are considered only by the National Assembly, defines bills that are bills not concerning county governments, and also defines bills concerning the county governments. Also outlines matters relating to publication and the enacting formula for bills and acts of Parliament, so as to standardize the practice between the houses. These matters were previously expressly provided for in the Constitution, that is before the 2010. The bill also provides for the publication of bills originating from either House of Parliament. This is either the Senate or the National Assembly. The enacting formula and imposes timelines for such publication to cure scenarios where the government printer at times delays in the printing of a bill request. So these are some of the contents of the bill in the clauses, and the members will resume debate on it as indicated in the order of business to be transacted in today's afternoon sitting. The Public Transport Motorcycle Regulation Bill, this is a bill that is originating from the Senate, Bill number 38 of 2023. This is a bill by the Kakamega Senator, Honorable Dr. Boni Halwale. Also debate on this bill already started at the chambers this afternoon. Business will be a resumption of that bill or of that debate that was interrupted on Thursday of 16th, the month of May, the year 2024. And this bill seeks to put in place a legal framework to regulate the use of motorcycles, commonly referred to as boda-bodas, in Kenya by introducing new provisions for their registration, operation, and safety at the county level. This bill provides for the establishment, composition, and functions of the County Motorcycle Transport and Safety Board in every county. Also provides that the board shall be responsible for the regulation, management, and coordination of all matters relating to the border transport sector within the county. This bill also, or the contents of this bill also indicate that a person shall not operate a border unless they have successfully completed a training course approved by the board. The contents of that particular course that will be approved by the board include safe and defensive riding techniques, traffic laws and regulations, customer care and etiquette, handling of emergency situations, basic motorcycle maintenance, and security awareness. There is a clause also that provides for the responsibilities of the owner, the rider, and the passenger of a boda. That bill will have its debate resume this afternoon, as indicated in the order of business for the members of the Senate this afternoon. Pursuant to the House Standing Order number 53-1, this provides for senators' request for statements. The statements these are statements for a committee, and the issues that may be addressed in the statements could relate to any matter under
Have quorum now. Clerk, call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
Next order.
Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, I have a communication to make on the communication number 21 of 2024 on the membership to the Mediation Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024. Honorable Senators, as you may recall, at the sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, 14th May 2024, I convened a message from the National Assembly that on Monday, 13th May 2024, the National Assembly, by resolution, rejected the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024. Consequently, the bill was committed to a mediation committee in accordance with the provisions of Article 112(2)(b) of the Constitution. Senators, you can have your seats. In the message, the Speaker of the National Assembly appointed members of the National Assembly to the Mediation Committee to consider the bill in accordance with Article 113 of the Constitution. Honorable Senators, will recall that while conveying the message, I indicated that an appropriate time I would appoint senators to the Mediation Committee. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Article 113(1) of the Constitution and standing under 166(2) of the Senate, and in consultation with the majority and minority party leaders, I appointed the following senators to the Mediation Committee. 1, Senator Kaduri Muronge, MGH MP. 2, Senator Dr. Boni Kalwale, CBS MP. 3, Senator Fatuma Nduro, CBS MP. 4, Senator Jackson Mandago, NGH MP. 5, Senator Mohamed Chute, MP. 6, Senator Edwin Sifuna, MP. 7, Senator Moses Kajwang, MP. 8, Senator Agnes Kavidu Mudhama, MP. And last but not the least, 9, Senator Andy Okech, MP. Vindileta reference SCN/L and P/MC 2024-03, dated 16 May 2024. The aforementioned names were communicated to the National Assembly. The Mediation Committee may therefore begin its work. I thank you. Next order. Honorable Senators, I'll just 2-3 comments, starting with the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Wambua Kio. Is it Kio or Kio?
It's Kio, Mr. Speaker. Kio. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for indulging us to just make brief comments on, which is really just a procedural communication from the chair. Mr. Speaker, the names as read by the chair, the members that have been appointed to this mediation committee, I think the Senate has put its best foot forward. We have nominated, in fact, when you look at that list from number 1 to number 5, they are all titled leaders. The Speaker, the expectation of this House, as we release this team to go and mediate, is that they should go with a firm position, not an inch more, not an inch less. Because as Speaker, the amount of money that this Senate has passed to go to the counties, it's an amount that has been arrived at scientifically. It's not guesswork. We are taking care of very basic but important aspects in the counties. We are taking care of inflation. We are taking care of statutory deductions. We are taking care of non-discretionary decisions that have been made by the national government that will have an effect on the spending of the counties. Mr. Speaker, we expect this team, and I'm happy that Senator Madago is part of that team. He was in the counties. We expect that this team would deliver 415 billion Kenya shillings to the counties. Mr. Speaker, I wish this team all the best, and I'm very sure that devolution will be better served. I thank you.
Senator Modigi Alexander. Just 2 minutes comment is good
Bwana
enough.
Speaker,
2 minutes kindly.
mimi nikiwa Senator wa Embu County naunga mkono kamati ambaye imetengenezwa, ambaye ya kutoka kwa walio wengi na walio wachache, na wameunda kamati ambaye ni watu ambaye wako na ushujaa, ni watu wameelemika vizuri, na ni watu wameona ile matatizo imekuwa na kaunti zetu, kaunti 46 na 7. Sio kumaanisha wale wengine hawezi fanya kazi, kwa sababu najua tuko seneta 67, lakini ile kamati imewekwa pale ni ya seneta wa Meru Kadhuri, na seneta rafiki wangu Kajwang, na seneta ambayo wa Nairobi, na seneta wengine wale wako na usunja. Ningeomba muende msungumuze na mtuletee matunda, kwa sababu mnajua kaunti zetu zote 47 mambo ya devolution imeleta shinda, kwa sababu kaunti nyingi kama kaunti ya Embu County, ile pesa inaenda kaunti ni kidogo, na ile budget ambaye magavana wataka pesa nyingi, kwa sababu mnajua agenda yetu tukiwa maseneta ni mambo ya kupeleka mambo ya devolution kule mashinani, mambo ya elimu, mambo ya kilimo, pia hao watu wetu wanataka maji hata ya irrigation, na iko na mambo mengi. Na tunajua magavana waliochaguliwa wakati wa hii kipindi ya serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ni wako na ujuzi wa kusaidia mwananchi mpaka mashinani. Na tena Mr. Kajwang' Senator, mkienda muambie watu wajue zile pesa tunataka iende mashinani ni ile mwananchi amelipa ushuru, ni ile mwananchi amelima, ni ile mwananchi ametafuta na njazo kubwa. Kwa hivyo ningeomba muende muongee na wale, ndio tuweze kuona kaunti zetu watapata pesa namna gani ndio waweze kusaidia mwananchi. Mimi ni Senator wa Embu County, asante, naunga mkono hiyo kamati na mfanye mtuletee ripoti mzuri. Ni mimi Daktari Alexander Mwinyi Mondiki. Asante.
Asante Senator wa Embu. Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your communication and for appointment of very able senators to go to the mediation. Mr. Speaker, Senate is here to defend devolution. At the moment we make a proposal for monies to go to the counties, it is not upon the National Assembly to say that money can be scooped, from CDF. The money for CDF is fixed by the Constitution and cannot be touched. All we are asking is for sufficient monies to be added and sent to the counties. Mr. Speaker, there are many county functions which have still been stuck to the nation, and we really want health to be fully devolved, agriculture to be fully devolved, and in fact, recently there are some markets allegedly being built in the counties by the national government. Mr. Speaker, it puts the counties in a very difficult position that these markets have to be designed from Nairobi, but the land they are going to be planted belongs to the counties, and the counties, it's as if they have no role. Mr. Speaker, we want the counties to take their rightful place, to take development to the people and at the grassroots. And therefore, these monies, I am urging that particular team, there is no budging, there is no going back. They have to make sure this money goes for devolution. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, we have not yet met the constitutional threshold. And therefore, there must be sufficient money to make sure that devolution works, it functions, and that the counties get their rightful share so that they can develop. Most of what has been going to counties, Mr. Speaker, are just expenses and very little money for development. It is a high time this Senate insisted money for development to go to the counties, and I believe it will happen, Mr. Speaker, and it is our rightful and constitutional expectation and duty to make sure devolution is achieved through sending more money to the counties. Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank you.
Senator William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with my colleagues who have spoken before me. Mr. Speaker, the membership whom you have read their names, I have no doubt in my mind, Mr. Speaker, that they have the capacity to match the team from the other side, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the debate on this bill was done in the National Assembly, I had a moment to listen to the discussions in the National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell the team that there is a very serious concerted effort to mislead the country that governors don't deserve more money. And the reason, Mr. Speaker, and I know my colleagues were able to listen, is because they claim that there is corruption. I don't deny, Mr. Speaker, there is no corruption in our counties. That is true. But the solution of that particular vice of corruption is not to deny the county governments the money. It is to put in place measures to deal with the corruption. So, Mr. Speaker, there is a very serious attempt in the other house to ensure. Number two, Mr. Speaker, in the entire debate, they only spoke about two things. That if you increase the money for counties, you will be reducing CDF. And when you reduce the money for counties, increase the money for counties, you reduce the money for the women reps. Mr. Speaker, that is a very narrow argument, because the argument here is the budget allocation. So I want to call upon my colleagues who will be representatives in that house, in that mediation committee, Mr. Speaker, that it is not about CDF. It's not about the GAF. It is about money. And Mr. Speaker, it is not really
maybe 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I've been away for long.
You have been away for long, so
I've been away.
Let me compensate you with at least.
I've been indisposed for some time, but I thank God I'm back now. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a constitutional requirement. And Mr. Speaker, in 2010, when I was serving as the Deputy Minister for Justice, there was a serious cry to have county governments, so that, Mr. Speaker, we are able to take our resources back there. Let us not kill that particular very important principle. So, Mr. Speaker, I support it. Thank you.
Senator Koiti Andrew Omtata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this important issue. I listened to the list you have read out, and I have my total confidence in them, 100%, that they are going to represent the true position of the Senate on the question of funds going to the counties. Our counties are underfunded, irrespective of how their money is being used. The counties are underfunded, many services cannot be provided, and we need more funds to go down to the counties. And as I have observed before, even the revenue, the calculation of the revenue has been manipulated to leave out a very big chunk of national government revenue. So the 15% we are talking of, at least 15%, is not even pegged on the true picture of the revenue raised nationally. It's revenue which it's a revenue that the National Assembly decided should be the revenue to go to the counties. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am very happy I've chosen a team that I've got no doubt will not blink. And there's no room for blinking. We cannot blink. This is a case whereby if they don't want to give us the money for the counties, then let the budget sink. The time when we are taken for a ride are over. Those times are. We must get the counties getting at least the very minimum they require to survive. The figures we have were arrived at through a study. They are not random, and they cannot be randomly varied. Let the counties have their cake. As to what they do with the cake, that's the work of the Senate. We go down there and make sure that the money is used according to the law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There is a lot of interest on this matter. I'm afraid I might stop this at some point. But let's hear Senator Joe Nyutu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. First of all, to comment that have been named by the to go to that to the Speaker, and like these are city not be doubted by anybody, Mr. Speaker. One thing I would want to ask our colleagues in the committee to carry with them, Mr. Speaker, is to go and let the members of the National Assembly understand that we do not have any fight between counties and constituencies, Mr. Speaker, because money going to the counties, Mr. Speaker, is also money that is going to go to the constituencies which these members of the National Assembly serve. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to impress upon the members of the National Assembly that there is no hostility that should be entertained between counties and constituencies. And so, when they are looking at the monies that are going to be sent to the counties, Mr. Speaker, they should be friendly in so doing. Mr. Speaker, I have had many members of the National Assembly complaining in their counties, in their constituencies, of inadequate health facilities and medical care, Mr. Speaker. And if this is a concern that they have for their constituents, Mr. Speaker, I think the only way to address such a problem, because the biggest responsibility of counties, Mr. Speaker, is health, I think it would then be to give in to our request, or to admit our request for 415 billion, Mr. Speaker, so that our health facilities may be sorted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when these members go to the negotiation table, because there is that reason that was given by the members of the National Assembly that
you know, once you get an opportunity, you should be able to engage what you can do in 2 minutes. Therefore, I think the message was very clear, and the team has been advised accordingly. Senator Sosi?
Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the members who have been appointed to sit on the mediation committee, and to say that the task ahead is a very, very important task in as far as Article 96 of the Constitution is concerned. Mr. Speaker, I think the National Assembly members, where I used to serve with you, must understand that the most progressive thing that happened to this country since independence is a proclamation of the new constitution for devolution, because there is an attempt to fight devolution. And it is unfortunate that the National Assembly is a house that is being used to fight devolution. I listened to the deliberation of the National Assembly on this matter, and I think in the mediation committee meeting, the first agenda should be that the majority leader and the chair of budget must give an apology, because they gave an impression that we as the senators were going to deduct money from CDF and money for roads, which was not the case. We are not talking about budget, the actual budget process. We are simply talking about division of revenue between the national government and the county government. So, Mr. Speaker, even as we talk about that, we need also to talk about the bigger issue here. On this order paper today, Mr. Speaker, there is order paper, there is order number 9, which is talking about bicameral relations between the two houses. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, this bill is unconstitutional. And I wonder why we are rushing us through.
Can you reserve your energy maybe until we get to the order number 9? You know, Senator Tabitha Kerochi is conspicuously sitting on the majority leader's seat today. Is it like you are temporary majority leader, or what is it? 2 minutes for you. Honorable Senators, whenever you get time this afternoon, you can be able to make your comment on that matter. So let us make some progress.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is true, I'm now the temporary majority leader for the 1 week. My boss is in US, so anything that you want to report about the majority leader's office, this is the office now you should report to. And you should clap me for that. And I want to take this as an opportunity to congratulate the Speaker for the appointment of this mediation committee on the division of revenue bill. I think the people, the lovely people of Kenya that elected us and brought us to, and sent us to this house, which is an upper house, one of the assignment was to ensure that we fight for more revenue and send it to our counties. So I know the team that has been elected has what it takes so that we can achieve one of the assignment that we've been sent to do in this house, to ensure that we fight for more revenue and send it to our counties. I think the other part is to ensure that money is, we as the senators, it's used for development to our counties, and ensure that our governors use this money for the development of our counties so that our people can benefit across Kenya. Because the counties rely on the CEO that has been appointed to represent the county, and that is the governor. So the next person who is there should do the oversight to ensure that money is utilized well, to ensure that it benefits our people. It is us, the senators. So let's do our work, and I'm sure the people that send us here will celebrate to know that they put the right people in this house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next order. Country.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order.
Order number 4, petitions.
Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
There's the majority leader. The majority. You are the principal assistant of the leader of the majority party.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 21st May 2024. Report of the Auditor General on financial statements of Embu Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2023. The Senate Majority Leader.
Chairperson, Standing Committee on Trade. All Vice Chair, all a member. Chair, Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. You have some papers today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 21st May 2024. 1, report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on its consideration of the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 2 of 2023. 2, report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on its consideration of the Constitutional of Kenya Amendment Bill, number 2, Bill Senate number 52 of 2023. 3, report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on its consideration of the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 3 of 2024. And 4, report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on its consideration of the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 10 of 2024. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to lay.
Thank you, Chair. Let us have the majority leader again on today the people on trade, industrialization and tourism.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 21st May 2024. Report of the Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism on its consideration of the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 53 of 2023. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
We have a statement and starting on the 53-1. Senator for Kirinyaga County, Senator James Murango. Actually, he has two statements. One to the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. The other one to the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. So those two statements are dropped. Next order. Because I'm following the order paper, those were the only two registered statements by the Senator for Kirinyaga. Clerk. Who was the statement on the International Tea Day? Any other statement will be read tomorrow because they must be scheduled. Okay. Who has the statement on International Tea Day? Is it Senator Chalgei? Senator Kisang, can you read your statement very fast? Yeah, where is your statement? Okay, proceed, Senator Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. This is a request for a statement on payment made by the Marsabit County government to various suppliers for the financial year 2021, 2022, 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding payments made by Marsabit County government to various suppliers for the financial year 2021, 22, 23. In the statement, the committee should establish 1, the ownership of registration status of the following companies: Dream Zone Company Limited, Buku Holdings Limited, Kobe Constructions and Water Services Limited, Sowell Trading Company Limited, Almiran Investment Limited, North Face Investment, Bismill Limited, Knoxville Ventures Limited, Culture Taxi Services, Al Halim Kenya Limited, Nexus Development Limited, Bismal Enterprise, Kachacha Company Limited, Tulasagalan Limited, Blue Tick Solution Limited, and Kesa Sumu Tech Limited companies, which have been providing services to Marsabit County government. Honorable Speaker, 2, state when Marsabit County government started contractual engagements with the aforementioned companies, outlining the nature of services each company has rendered to the county, further verifying payments of approximately 1,013,480,731.95 made to these companies during the financial year 2022-2023. Number 3,
identify the bank accounts held by the Marsabit County Government in KCB Bank and Equity Bank Limited, and furnish bank statements for the financial years 2021, 2022 to 2022, 2023 for the county government operations. 4, cause the Financial Reporting Center, FRC, the Asset Recovery Agency, AAR, and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Authority to investigate any suspicious financial transactions conducted by Marsabit County Government pertaining to payments for goods and services, and hold to account persons responsible for misappropriating or pilferage of county funds. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next order. Okay, so by revoking standing order 45-2, we defer order number 8. We have no numbers for the division. Then we go to order number 9. Clerk, order number 9. Oh, you have to go. Yes, now the statement. Okay, fine. Can you make the statement, Chalgay? And today you are not well organized.
No, you know I've been on the top of the mountain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your intelligence. Statement on an issue of general topical concern called International Tea Day. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52-1 to make a statement on issue of general topical concern, namely celebration of International Tea Day. In 2005, Mr. Speaker, tea-producing countries, including Sri Lanka, Nepal, Kenya, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Uganda, came together to celebrate International Tea Day. Later in 2019, Mr. Speaker, the Intergovernmental Group on Tea decided to celebrate International Tea Day every day on May 21st. The United Nations accepted this celebration, and the first UN International Tea Day was celebrated on 21st May 2020. Mr. Speaker, sir, today, being 21st May 2024, we join the rest of the world in celebrating International Tea Day. We encourage Kenyans not only to produce tea, but also to be consumers of it. Besides its taste, tea has several health benefits, such as reducing the risk of heart attack and stroke, aiding in weight loss, protecting bones, preventing tooth decay and loss, boosting the immune system, soothing the digestive system, helping to battle cancer, and helping to relax the body. Mr. Speaker, sir, according to the latest data from the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, more than 7 million tons of tea are produced worldwide. Kenya is the third leading producer and the biggest exporter, and accounting for about 28% of the world's tea export. Mr. Speaker, sir, small-scale tea farming in Kenya accounts for about 65% of the total tea production in the country, with the rest being produced by multinationals. Over the years, the tea sector in Kenya has continued to be a major foreign exchange earner for over our country and has become a catalyst for the growth of rural area economies since post-independence. With the right political goodwill, and allow me, Mr. Speaker, from His Excellency the President and the Deputy President, and from the Kenya Kwanza government, which is fronting tea sectoral reforms, and we had a tea engagement and reform sector at Kericho last year that have started to take root. Smallholder farmers will see higher market dividends from this season. So, Speaker, sir, as we entrench these tea reforms, mostly targeting small-scale tea farmers and the local farmer, we recognize that the sector is one of the key drivers of Kenya's socio-economic development. It is a key pillar in economic growth and provides a direct source of livelihood to over 750,000 farmers and employs millions of people. Like, for example, in Nandi, out of 6 sub-counties, 4 grow tea, even including your county, Mr. Speaker. Some of the reforms are already in place, include the introduction of minimum market price under-guarantee minimum reforms, the fertilizer subsidy initiative to farmers, an increase in monthly payments to farmers, timely payment of bonuses, and reduction of interest rate to farmers by financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, with the increase in rainfall this year, we expect that the tea production, and it is worth to note, Mr. Speaker, that some of the tea factories are no longer picking tea, for example, in Bomet and many other counties, because the tea production is too much because of heavy rainfall and subsidized fertilizer by the government. Therefore, we call on the relevant authorities to ensure a steady market and price stability for our tea farmers. We want also to call to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, to assure our tea farmers that we will support and assist in legislating, and you are aware there is a Tea Amendment Act in the floor of the House, on necessary reforms, Mr. Speaker, and ensure maximum production and better returns, Mr. Speaker. It is also a call to Kenyans, especially who take other hard drinks, to reduce the hard drinks like alcohol and consume more tea to ensure we improve on local consumption and protect our farmers. So, Mr. Speaker, I know there are a number of us who take other type of drinks, but I want to call upon Kenyans, let us drink tea in the morning, in the evening, Mr. Speaker.
Some of the issues you are now raising are not in your statement.
No, Mr. Speaker, you know today is Tea International Day.
So
I request...
in the statement as approved.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, just in 30 seconds. Since today is Tea International Day, people who take other drinks can day-to-day take tea, and we'll make progress as a country. I thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Speaker.
I want to give 2-3 senators to make a comment on this International Tea Day, especially the senator from Bomet County, Senator Sigei Wakiri.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. And as we prepare to celebrate the International Day tomorrow in Nandi County, Mr. Speaker, we take pride as tea growing zones. Why? Because tea, Mr. Speaker, is one of the major foreign earners for this country. Where I come from, I do grow tea in 4 out of 5 sub-counties, and 90% of all cash crop, if I may call them, is actually from tea. And therefore, I support the statement by the Honorable Senator Cherargei, who is actually the host of this conference tomorrow. And I believe that this will go a long way in enhancing the reforms which have been running for a couple of years now. This began in the first attempt by the majority leader of this House when he set up the Tea Amendment Act 2020, which unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, got into challenges where people went to court to challenge various sections of that particular act. But fortunate enough, following the efforts which were picked up by the current administration, where it had identified agriculture as one of its 5 major items in its delivery to the people of Kenya, agriculture was picked up, and tea in its own way was a specific crop that has been given a lot of attention. And Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, I am also spearheading additional amendments to the 2020 Act. As we speak right now, all the parties that had filed various cases in court have agreed to a compromise. We have withdrawn all those cases, and we have reached a position where very many of the issues which had been raised towards the reforms in the tea sector have been resolved. I believe that the outcome of this conference tomorrow will highlight the very specific aspects that the tea sector in Kenya will be improved in order to make sure that we enhance not only the foreign earnings from tea, but also direct benefit to the farmers. I would encourage members who come from tea growing zones to participate in this conference and contribute towards ensuring that our farmers not only get support from the government, but also to have that personal commitment to ensure the sector is improved and supported. I thank you, and once again, I want to encourage Senator Cherargei to make sure that he fully engages the farmers so that it is not going to be a white-collar engagement, but a farmer-based kind of an engagement from the ground. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just in 2 minutes, you can be able to make that comment, Clerk. Kindly 2 minutes. Mombasa County is the highest beneficiary of tea that are produced in other counties. So, Senator Mohamed Faki,
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia taarifa ya kusherehekea siku ya chai iliyoletwa bungeni na Senator Cherargei. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mombasa ndio soko kubwa kabisa ulimwenguni la chai. Na ni faraja kubwa kwa watu wa Mombasa kwamba kwa miaka sasa wameweza kuwa ndio wenyeji wa soko la chai ulimwenguni. Mheshimiwa Spika, sio chai ya Kenya peke yake ambayo inauzwa katika soko la Mombasa. Kuna chai ya kutoka Burundi, kuna chai ya kutoka Rwanda, kuna chai ya kutoka Tanzania, kuna chai ya kutoka sehemu nyingi ambao Mheshimiwa Spika hutumika. Chai zile hutumika kufanya mchanganyiko na chai ya Kenya, ndio ikawa chai ya Kenya imekuwa bora zaidi na pia kuboresha zile chai nyingine ambazo zinauzwa ulimwenguni. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la kusikitisha ni kwamba hivi karibuni kumekuwa na hujuma ya soko lile la chai katika kaunti ya Mombasa. Na hujuma hizi Mheshimiwa Spika zimechangia mataifa mengine kuweza kufungua masoko yao ya chai. Kwa mfano Tanzania wameweza kufungua mnada wao wa chai hivi sasa, na chai yao haiji tena Kenya kwa sababu ya masuala kama haya ambayo nayazungumzia. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, tunapoangalia kusaidia kuinua chai, lazima tuangalie pande zote mbili. Chai bila ya soko Mheshimiwa Spika haitaweza kumsaidia mkulima. Lazima chai ile ipate soko ambalo ni la kisawasawa, ambalo litaweza kumsaidia mkulima na yule ambaye anauza chai ile. Mheshimiwa Spika, hapa katikati kuna shirika la KTDA. Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi tulikuwa kuna mkutano na katika kamati ya leba ambapo kampuni moja ama shirika moja la chai ambalo linaajiri wafanyaji kazi Mheshimiwa Spika limekataa kulipa mfanyaji kazi kwa muda wa miaka 3 sasa Mheshimiwa Spika. Na walipoitwa watu wa KTDA walikuwa wanasema kwamba mfanyaji kazi huo si mfanyaji kazi wetu. Tayari kampuni ile factory ya chai ambayo inahudumu kule wamesema huyu ni mtu wetu. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, katikati hapa mashirika kama KTDA Mheshimiwa Spika ndio mara nyingi yanaweza kuhujumu zile juhudi za mkulima. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, pale katika soko la chai la Mombasa, wengi Mheshimiwa Spika pale wanatumia wakati wao kufanya utafiti wa kuweza kuona kwamba chai ile ambayo inakuja inaboreshwa. Kwa mfano Mheshimiwa Spika, hata hapa bungeni wiki iliyokwisha niliweza kuonyesha baadhi ya maseneta watumie chai ya hibiscus, ambayo hiyo pia ni moja katika zile chai ambazo zimebuniwa. Kwa hivyo siku hizi sio chai peke yake, lakini chai imeweza kulelewa kiasi ambacho utapata ladha tofauti tofauti za chai ambazo zinauzwa, na hii inachangia pakubwa kuipa Kenya fedha za kigeni. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, tunaposherehekea chai hii Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba lazima pia tutambue mchango unaofanywa na shirika la East African Tea Traders kule Mombasa pamoja na soko la chai ya Mombasa, kwa sababu pale ndio wale ambao wanauza chai, wananunua chai, wanakutana na wale wanauza chai ili kuhakikisha kwamba soko la chai Mheshimiwa Spika linaendelea kupanuka. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Hapa namuona Deputy Speaker Emeritus, Professor Mangri Kamal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to say a few words in the celebration of tea. Tea, Mr. Speaker, has not only been the money maker for this country, but it's been a beverage that every Kenyan loves. We know we have our own way of making tea, and even when you are out of this country, people talk of the Kenyan tea and the way Kenyans mix their tea. And so this is something that is worth celebrating. And even as we celebrate, Mr. Speaker, we know that there are areas in this country where there are no cash crops, and we want to encourage that cash crops can spread. And tea is one of those which grows in most corners of this country. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I was in Embu the other day, and I have shared this with Senator Mundiki, that I went and discovered something I didn't know. A plant that looks like tea, but is called mogoga. Mr. Speaker, my discovery of mogoga was very interesting because as we were driving, we met a lot of vehicles that were running in supersonic speed. And I said, what is it that these people are rushing? Then they said it's something called mogoga. So I asked to be taken to a farm to see this plant. When I saw the plant, it looked like a very healthy tea crop. And I'm saying this.
Senator Tabitha Mutinda, what do you think you can inform a professor who has a lot of knowledge?
I don't love
because she must accept first that she needs your information.
Thank you. I'm also following the roots of becoming one. But you know, from where we come from, me and you, from the great county of Meru, it's also good that Professor notes that we also have tea in Meru County. So not only she saw Mogoka, but we also have tea.
No, she saw Mogoka in Embu, not in Meru. She mentioned in Embu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank her for that information because I don't know why she read my mind. That I wanted a replacement of mogoga with tea. Not only in Embu, but also in Meru. Because when I saw this plant in the farm that I went to, it was a very healthy bush. I told them this is tea. They said, no, it's not tea. But I asked the lady, the owner of the small acre that she had. She said the only problem is that my son has also become an addict to this one. So I said, what is it? He said, yes, we have been planting it, but he has become an addict and is causing problems. Tea does not cause any problems. Mr. Speaker, it is the best drink. So I want to encourage that where we can plant it, if we can replace these other plants that seem to be addictive to our youth and seem to be messing our youth, let's spread out. And in fact, when I came, I reported the same to my colleague senator from Embu, and I said, there's a plant that looks like tea. Why don't we go for tea? And I really would like to encourage him that as we celebrate this, he actually goes down to the ground and encourages people, because where that plant grows, I think we can have the best variety of tea, the best, because that plant is so healthy, except for that idea that it's very addictive, and our youth seems to be derailed because of that. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I can see my colleague wants to respond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Professor Kamal, you know, now you have mentioned Mundiki 5 times. And he must didn't get 2 minutes to say something.
Asante Bwana Spika, naunga mkono siku ya kesho ya kulima wa majani, na katika Embu County tuko na 4 sub county, Manyata na Runyenje huwa napanda majani. Na mambo ya ajabu, miaka mingi wamekuwa kipanda, na hiyo wakati tulisaliwa tulikuta watoto wakifunzwa na hiyo pesa ya manjani. Lakini wakati huu ni aibu kubwa sana, kwa sababu unakuta kilimo ya manjani inaendelea kusoroteka na unakuta ile bei inaendelea kuwa chini. Lakini naunga mkono siku ya kesho, wakiendelea pia wataongea vile kilimo ya manjani itaweza kushukuru njia ile inafaa, ndio bei iweze kusaidia kusaidia wakulima wa manjani. Kama kuna mtu anaumia ni mtu wa kilimo wa manjani, kwa sababu anaamuka saa 11 wakati mvua inanyesha, na pia ni watoto, ni watu wazima, na pia wazee na akina mama. Na wakati ule mwingine wakienda kuuza, unakuta mpaka hiyo kila siku mpaka hiyo vitu iweze kutolewa na iende iuzwe, na unakuta kuanga hasira nyingi sana. Kwa hiyo naunga hiyo mkono, na pia bei iweze kuangaliwa. Na pia ukienda parapara ile magari inapitia inakuwa na shinda mambo ya CDF, na pia ya county na national government, hiyo maparapara inafaa iangaliwe. Pia Bwana Spika, nataka nikosoe Senator Kamaro Professor kwa kutaja ni kilimo yetu. Unakuta wakati wa zamani watu wa chini ilikuwa ni maskini, lakini leo tuna tuweze kutengeneza kama ni juice na chewing gum na zile vitu zingine. Kwa hivyo ningeomba Senator, wakati tutalete hiyo mbilo hapa, ningeomba vile nimekuwa nikisaidia nyinyi na kusupport mbilo zenu, hiyo mbilo ambaye wakati itakunja, ningeomba mnisaidie iwe maseneta 27 ama 30. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, nataka nikosoe Professor Kamal, hiyo ni vitu ambaye ilikuwako hata wakati wa zamani. Kwa hivyo Bwana
juu ya nini?
Ni juu ya, ningetaka kuuliza kama ni haki kwa Seneta Mundigi kusimama ndani ya bunge hili kutia sherehe kwa mmea ambao kulingana na Narcotics Act ni dawa ya kulevya, inahusiana na dawa ya kulevya, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na hata hapa bungeni Mheshimiwa,
what is your point of order?
Anapotosha taifa kwamba ni mmea ambao unafaa watu, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu miadharati ni jambo ambalo limepigwa marufuku na Narcotics Act. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, hii mugoka
Senator Faki, ningependa kukujulisha ya kwamba hiyo mmea Onda Senator Mundigi. Have you seat?
Thank you, Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Nilikuwa na kueleza ya kwamba huo mmea unatoka Mbere huko Embu County. Ni mmea ambao umehalalishwa na serikali ya Kenya katika Crop Act 2013 ulihalalishwa. Kwa hivyo labda ulete sheria ingine ya kuitoa kama kilimo, kama mmea maalum wa taifa la Kenya, basi ndio utakuwa kweli. No. Both of you out of order. Please. You executed your point of order, Senator Mohamed Faki.
Seeking to amend the Narcotics Act so that it removes caffeine and caffeine as narcotic drugs in our legislation.
So, sababu unajua wewe nimekuwa na wewe weekend mzima, na kwa hivyo sipendi kujumu ama iwe ya kwamba sikupi ruhusa kuongea, lakini naomba tafadhali tupige hatua kwa sasa. Attend is about tea, not Mogoka, not Pyredrum, not Coffee Tea, International Tea Day. So whoever is Senator Tabitha? Yes. On tea? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And I also want to join the world as they celebrate the Tea Day tomorrow. I know Nakuru County people are farmers of tea, and I think as one of the senators have said, I think it's to ensure the farmers are taken care of so that they can all benefit. Because if you look at the tea internationally, it's one of the crops that is regarded very highly. But when you see the people who plant that tea and pluck the tea, they don't match to the standard that is given globally. And for me, the tea, I don't imagine how the world would be without tea, because that is the cup that you wake up in the morning to wake you up so that you are able to take your day. Then from there, I want to ensure, the people to know that tea is medicine, and we should all celebrate tea and have many cups as possible, but not replace with the wine that we want for our food, the beer that we want for, like the way Cherangei is trying to say. The thirst of the beer, the thirst of our wine when we take our meals, it is different from the tea. So don't mix the issues. Just market your tea and ensure the tea people understand it's medicine, and they can take as many cups as possible before the evening or before the end of the day. You can have more than 10 cups of tea. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Sifuna.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'm aware that the entire government is in the US. So I was looking across the aisle and seeing some of the most vociferous defenders of this government. I thought they would be on this trip, but they are here celebrating International Tea Day with us. This should be a clear lesson that shouting horse from the other side will not endear you to the presidency, Mr. Speaker. Number two, I'm a bit confused, Mr. Speaker, on this International Tea Day. Should it be...
Point of order, Senator Chalgei.
Mr. Speaker, you cannot allow Senator Sifuna to be cantankerous. Mr. Speaker, under Section 105, Parliament and Senate Mwaso is an independent arm of government. The trip, Mr. Speaker, is undertaken by the National Executive. Is it in order to try and cast aspersions by indicating that any trip that is taken outside Parliament or outside by the executive should be taken with parliamentarians, yet we have our own budget and we are independent arm of government? Is he making it in good faith, Mr. Speaker? Or is jealousy that he was left out of the trip? Can he be clear?
Senate. Honorable Speaker, I want members of this House to reflect on their own standing. When you are only invited to trips to the goat auction in Mogosho, but others are taken to the US, you should reflect on your standing within your own party. Mr. Speaker, the second point I wanted clarity on is whether in celebrating this International Tea Day, we are celebrating the growers or the drinkers. Because if it is the drinkers of tea, that debate should be properly anchored by Senator Osotsi from Vihiga and myself as the leading Luya leaders in this House, who are known to be the highest consumers of this product. I don't know what Cherargei knows about tea more than Senator Osotsi, because Osotsi both grows the tea and drinks tea heavily, Honorable Speaker. So my concern really is that clarity. Maybe the maker of that statement can tell us, are we celebrating the drinkers or the growers? Thirdly, Honorable Speaker, I was a bit surprised hearing the head of state speak the other day, and he said that he is not aware of any Kenyan tea brand. I have grown up drinking Ketepa, knowing this is Kenyan tea. I would like some clarity on these matters from the maker of this statement, Honorable Speaker. Does Kenya have a Kenyan brand of tea? What is this I've been drinking? Is Ketepa from Sri Lanka? Honorable Speaker, finally, I want to encourage the leadership of the areas, Nandi and even Bomet, where this tea is grown, to also reflect on the resolution of the disputes that we have seen, especially regarding foreign companies that have been holding land in those areas and have been growing tea all these years. At the beginning of this term of Parliament, there were very serious incidents in Bomet and in Nandi, where even people lost their lives and machinery was destroyed, property of immense value was destroyed. Honorable Speaker, we never hear from Cherargei how that matter was resolved. In fact, the protests there were more violent, and we didn't see the sort of police action being taken on people in Nandi and people in Bomet who are burning property and destroying property owned by these companies, Honorable Speaker. So as we celebrate this International Tea Day, please let us reflect on all these matters so that we as a country can protect this very key source of foreign exchange and this industry that employs thousands of Kenyans. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also like to make a comment on this statement. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, I come from a tea growing region, and we produce some of the best quality tea in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, the problem that we've been facing as farmers across board is that we've never taken a firm position on how we can empower our farmers, be it tea, be it coffee, be it avocado, be it macadamia. Indeed, tomorrow, as we reflect on tea consumers and tea growers, we must ask ourselves, what is it that we've done for the tea farmers? Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm happy to report that for the first time, before this House, in the Agricultural Committee, we dealt with the tea bill and improved on it to ensure that we empower the farmers, and we by involving the county government, and more important, Mr. Speaker, sir, creating mechanisms where farmers can seek and access markets directly internationally. But as we do that, Mr. Speaker, it is also important to ask ourselves whether we've been doing enough to ensure that value addition in our produce, be it tea, be it coffee, a bit of attention, and the diversity of knowledge in this House, we can be able to unleash, ensuring that the value chain that will unleash the farmers gets down there. As we also do that, it is important also to report that for the first time, we have a government in place that is and has come with a lot of political goodwill to ensure that the farmers of this country do not only get their rightful dues, but they do access and they to live from their collective bargain by ensuring that they pull together their resources so that they can make a better bargains and also achieve economies of scale. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, we've also seen that the government has endeavored to bring affordable fertilizer, subsidized fertilizer, though there are some people who had tried to abuse the mechanism. It has indeed improved the yield, and that is evidently clear. We can see that from the previous harvests, we have better yield, better quality, and most importantly, the farmers have been able to increase their income. And with that, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support. Thank you.
Senator Buru Oginga.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also used to grow coffee in Nandi, and I still have, I'm a farmer in Nandi, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to comment about this International Tea Day because, Mr. Speaker, Kenya produces very high quality tea. And internationally, Mr. Speaker, Kenyan tea is used for blending other low quality teas. And of tea of what tea, and English tea is sold as one of the best teas in the world, Mr. Speaker. And yet Britain does not even have a single tree of tea in their country. Mr. Speaker, this is because of the trade barriers. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to protectionism, internationally, even in the WTOs, it is a very, very big argument that the developed countries where we export our goods, they want us to continue as appendages of supply of raw materials to their industries, thus creating jobs in their own countries. And Mr. Speaker, they want us to be exporting raw tea. That is why I think Honorable Sifuna was asking why the Kenyan branded Kenyan tea internationally. Internationally, we might not have. We only have Ketepa here locally, Mr. Speaker. But when you want to export tea, processed tea, high quality tea of Kenya, they put very high tariff barriers that they put on the tea. So they come here in Mombasa, tea is auctioned raw, and Mr. Speaker, our farmers don't get value for their sweat. Mr. Speaker, it is high time that we negotiated jointly as Africans and as the third world and agreed on how to pressurize that market, because they bring their goods here with very, very low tariffs. We give them very, very nice terms under the EU. But when we don't have so much industries, Mr. Speaker, our only exports are agriculture. So when it comes to agriculture, they want you to just supply raw materials raw without value addition, Mr. Speaker. And they make it extremely difficult for you to access their market if you process, if you do value addition. Mr. Speaker, this is the area where we should work on together with all the other countries together so that we can access those markets with the value-added goods, Mr. Speaker, so that our farmers and our people can get to.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, wengi wametaja na kusifia kunywa ama kubugia chai, aina yoyote ya chai. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kizazi hiki katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza, japo tunasherehekea siku ya kimataifa ya chai, lazima tuhakikishe kwamba katika vitongoji vya nchi na wanywaji wa chai wanajivunia vinywaji hivi. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika bonde la Ufa katika Mlima Kenya, miundombinu na msingi imewekwa imara kwa linda wakulima wa majani chai na viwanda vya majani chai. Lakini katika mkoa wa Magharibi, Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo ni tofauti. Japo tunasherehekea kimataifa, kimashinani watu wa mkoa wa Magharibi wana maswali ya kuuliza. Katika mkoa wa Magharibi, hususan Mlima Elgon na vitongoji vya Bungoma, tulikubaliana na serikali kwamba ni lazima ama ni sharti kuwe na viwanda ama kiwanda katika mlima ili wakulima wa majani chai katika eneo hilo waweze kufurahia kama wenzio katika sehemu mbalimbali za nchi ya Kenya. Hadi sasa mfumo wa makadirio ya kifedha yamepita, lakini bado tunaishi kwa matumaini. Tunataraji kwamba isiwe hadithi ya matumaini ya mbwa kutamatika pale mlango unapofungwa na mlango wa jikoni, Mheshimiwa Spika. Sasa tunajadili umuhimu ama ubora wa majani chai, lakini hatuwezi kuwa na majani chai ambayo yana hali ya juu iwapo pembejeo ni gushi. Iwapo pembejeo hizi watu hawataki kuwajibika na kuhakikisha kwamba wakulima wa majani chai, wakulima wa pareto, wakulima wa kahawa wanapata mbolea ambayo inastahili na hivi kwamba viwe viwango vya kimataifa. Sasa japo tunafurahi, tuna changamoto kama serikali kuhakikisha kwamba tuendelee kufurahia kwa pamoja kwa jasho la haki. Pasiwe wakulima wanatoa jasho na wachache wanakula manufaa ya jasho la wakulima katika nchi ya Kenya. Sasa ni jukumu letu sisi wote kama maseneta katika jumba hili tuhakikishe tunawatenda haki wakulima, tunawatenda haki wanywaji wa chai na vile vile washikadau katika sekta nzima ya chai katika nchi ya Kenya. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na watakia sikukuu ya chai.
We have very few minutes to wind up this order. Daniel Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, tea is a very important plant in the country, and I want to take a direction of tea growers, the farmers themselves, Mr. Speaker. And in the last 10 years or so, there has been issues, although most of them have been sorted out either by legislation or by management or by government, where tea farmers were not getting a proper deal from their sweat. And Mr. Speaker, my first trip to Meru was with you when we were going to sort out a very urgent matter on tea growers. And we went to your constituency with yourself and quite a number of members of parliament, and the farmers came out strong, Mr. Speaker. And with your leadership, a solution of the tea farmers is to be found within 24 hours. They threatened to uproot all the trees, and they were now going to plant more profitable plants. Mr. Speaker, we should never find ourselves in that situation for tea farmers in the country, whereby when they sell their tea, Mr. Speaker, there are delays in their payment. Mr. Speaker, when they sell their tea, they should be paid the right value for the tea, Mr. Speaker. I know the tea is marketed in Kenya and all over the world, and for many years I've been in the Committee for Agriculture, and I'm very familiar with what is happening in Mombasa, in the tea markets, and also what is happening abroad in the tea auctions. Mr. Speaker, now our tea, and especially tea from Meru and Mount Kenya generally, is highly sold in Russia through Dubai. So our marketers have happened now to find a new huge market in Russia. And therefore, we should make sure that, Mr. Speaker, at all material times, that the farmers get value for their sweat, and they get value for what they work for, and they get value for their commodity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Kisang Kipkemoi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, also rise to make comments on the International Tea Day, and also to confirm that Elgeyo-Marakwet County, actually we are a tea growing county. You know, we are known for other things, but we also grow tea, and we have one factory, and we are in the process of getting a second factory, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as a country, you know, Kenya, we produce high quality tea, as our colleague Senior Oburu has said. But the biggest challenge that we have is we export raw tea. England, UK is using our tea and processing and packaging, and they call it English tea. You go to UK and buy expensive tea, and the beneficiaries are not Kenyans who are growing the tea, Honorable Speaker. That's why it is very important that if there are any barriers that doesn't allow us to export our processed tea, that we do the way the President has done with the Japanese, the Toyota in Japan, Honorable Speaker, where they are coming to Kenya and set up a factory to manufacture spare parts. We also need to, if they don't open up and these barriers, then we make them to come and process the tea here in the country so that we can generate employment opportunities for our youth, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you remember early 80s and early 90s, Honorable Speaker, when there was a lot of deforestation, the late President Daniel Arap Moi came up with Nyayo Tea Zones. And the reason for Nyayo Tea Zone was to ensure we conserve our forests. I believe also we need to encourage our communities, because in the process of planting and growing 15 billion trees, Honorable Speaker, we need to partner with Kenya Forest Service so that we can ensure all around our forest, instead of fencing our forest, Honorable Speaker, we plant a few meters of tea, which will generate employment. It will give us foreign exchange and also employ our youth, Honorable Speaker. It's very important. And Honorable Speaker, people have talked about addiction, maybe Mira and Mukuka, Honorable Speaker. I believe even tea, the Keteba tea that we have taken forever, Kenya, we have some very pure tea, Honorable Speaker. Maybe we need to put something that can make our youth get addicted to tea instead of other things. We need to ask Keteba if there is anything that we can put so that, you know, we become addicted to tea and not the other issues, Honorable Speaker. I know you are saying you are highest consumer of tea in Western Kenya. If anything, majority, if you go to Rift Valley, we don't consume the other things you guys consume. We consume tea and milk. Honorable Speaker, tea, just tea and milk. Honorable Speaker, let's encourage also our people that where they have fertile land, where tea can be grown, we should encourage them to start planting maybe an acre, 2, 3 acres, 5 acres of tea, Honorable Speaker, so that we can have more cash crops across the country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I support this today. We need to celebrate our farmers, Honorable Speaker, because the person to celebrate most should be the farmers and also the consumers. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support this particular statement.
The list is Senator Abbas Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. you know, the tea growers think that only they have the right for tea only, while northern Kenya people are the highest consumers of tea. So I think I want to tell you that you should appreciate that we take a lot of tea, and we are marketing the tea of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I think much has been said that the tea in Kenya, the Kenyan tea is actually of high value, and but the unfortunate thing is the tea is being monopolized by the multinationals that are growing it. The Kenyan farmers are disadvantaged. They rarely access the market, and most of the tea is now sold in auction. I think this gives a disadvantage to our farmers. One other thing is that tea coming from Kenya, especially which is one of the best tea, is that people like UK, they grow tea also. Pakistan, they grow tea, but they still import from here, and they package it and rename it, rebrand it again and rename it. That the source of the tea is coming from Pakistan, it's coming from UK, something like the Kiteba. Kiteba actually tea is tea that is grown in Kericho by these multinationals, but when you go to those other parts of the world, you'll find that this tea is actually said the source is coming from UK. And I know the same thing is done by Pakistan and other countries. One other thing is the problem we have actually is middlemen. You know, in most of the crop agricultural products, farmers are not getting the value for their money, about their product. It's at their disadvantage. Actually, most of it, they are brokers. And this guy is called KTDA, actually has not given good services to our farmers, especially the small-scale farmers. And therefore, we need to review the tea auctions and all these things. One other thing is that the Kenya, instead of selling the raw material, we need to value add the tea. So at least we can be able to get the product, the value for the product and for the farmers. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
There's a member who is on and off, Senator Tavida. Do you want to comment on this tea day or another matter which is coming in the next order?
No, Mr. Speaker, I've really been waiting to make a comment because you know where I come from.
On and off.
No, I don't know what's happening with my mic. Senator Sifuna, you are out of order.
On behalf of all the Meru, including
yes,
myself.
Exactly, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to speak on behalf of the Meru County, where I also come from, because this is one of our cash crops, so that Meru stops being seen that it only deals with the Mogoka and Mira. We are enriched to, we are godly blessed to be able to have different cash crops that have international markets, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I want to encourage many people even to visit, because it's very hard, you know, very hard to find people suffering with any hunger or any challenging issues, because when it comes to job opportunities and cash crops, we lead in these two great cash crops. But all said, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to ask Senator Cheryl Guy why this invite was not extended to this Senator Sifuna had raised on who is to be celebrated, but it is good to know that without the farmers, they will not be able to have the end product. And of course, being the users of the end product, it's always very critical to celebrate these farmers and to always ensure that they continue expanding their agricultural sector. I'm one person who, from my business perspective, I do support the tea industry very much, and I know with what the government has also put ahead, matters fertilizer, the correct seedlings, the research centers, then we believe as we move forward, then farmers will be able to also have direct markets to their products. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next on the clerk.
Order number 9, the Houses of Parliament Bicameral Relations Bill, National Assembly Bills number 44 of 2023. Second reading.
Yes, Senator Sige, you have 19 minutes. You can utilize them. If you are intended to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Tabitha is already complaining, and I'm indicating to her that I will do not more than 19, but could be less than 19 minutes. And Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to this very important and sad bill, particularly that has been brought before this House. And to start with, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the honorable members of this House to read the report that the Jailer Committee has tabled on this particular bill so that they understand the extent of what provisions the bill is seeking to. And while the majority leader, Mr. Speaker, was moving this bill, he did indicate to the House that over time there has been efforts made to ensure that the bicameral relations, that is the relationship between this House and the National Assembly, is harmonized so as to ensure that the legislative mandate of the two houses is in such a manner that it will be aimed at advancing the role of these two houses. Mr. Speaker, he went ahead to also confirm to the House that previously there have been efforts to indeed pass a legislation that would govern this particular relationship, and this is the Houses of Parliament bicameral relations, which is currently being debated. However, in the 12th Parliament, there was a bill that was passed by this House, determination of the nature of bills, procedure bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2018, which this Honorable House debated and passed, but did not manage to be considered by the National Assembly. The reasons behind that inability to have it considered, Mr. Speaker, is what, in the view of our committee, is what informed the content of the present bill. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask, as I've said, the members to read the report, which the ultimate decision that the committee made is to reject this bill in its second reading. And the justifications, Mr. Speaker, are all running through from the provisions of the first clause to the provisions of almost the last clause, which in a short while I will explain and justify why the committee proposed that, or rather recommended that this bill be rejected in the second reading. Mr. Speaker, Article 94(1) of the Constitution of Kenya provides for the mandate of this House, and that particular mandate is exercised for and on behalf of the people who elected the membership to this House. That Article 94, read together with other provisions of the Constitution, provides for the bills that must come through this House, whether it is emanating from the National Assembly or whether it has started from this particular House and it goes down to the National Assembly. This particular bill, Mr. Speaker, has in its provision tampered with that particular mandate of the House, and in the process has largely affected or will largely affect the legislative process, which this House will definitely have failed pursuant to the provisions of Article 96 in its role of protecting the devolution and the relevant other additional mandates of the county governments. Mr. Speaker, in essence, what the committee has come up with is to analyze each and every provision of the bill and has given its mandate, has given its recommendation in whether or not such a particular provision supports the mandate of this House or not. In our report, which is running through, Mr. Speaker, 3 chapters, we have had to analyze each and every of the provisions which has been provided for in the bill and given our recommendations. Mr. Speaker, one of the very critical provisions which we must analyze, and the reason why we are saying we should reject this bill, is the provisions of Clause 6(2) of the Constitution. That seeks to say that the question about interpretation of whether or not there is an issue that must be determined by the speakers is, according to this bill, after the bill has been read in the National Assembly. And when we read the provisions of the Constitution, Article 110(3), and Mr. Speaker, you will allow me to refer to this for purposes of stressing the extent of the attack on the mandate of this House by this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, Article 110(3) of the Constitution starts by the words, before either house considers a bill. The bold provision, before either house, whether it is this particular house or the National Assembly. But the provisions under Clause 6.2 says that a bill can be considered by the National Assembly and a question only arises. That is, it says, whenever a bill is published in the Gazette, meaning the bill, first of all, will have already been published by the time such consideration is given. In accordance with Section 4 of this Act, a Speaker may, subject to Section 7 and at any time before the period specified for the second reading. That is very critical, Mr. Speaker, because what the bill is saying is that you can consider a bill. It doesn't matter whether there is a question as to whether it affects counties or not. It can only become a question after the second reading. In this case, it only becomes something that the Speaker can now be referred to have been seized over question. We are saying that particular interpretation under this provision of 6 subclause 2 is completely and fundamentally different from what the Constitution under Article 110(3) says. And on that basis alone, Mr. Speaker, we are saying this bill has taken away the mandate of this House without considering the fact that the bill in itself ought to have enhanced the relationship between the houses to ensure that the legislative mandates of the two houses and as per the Constitution is supported to be as broad and as inclusive as it should be. Another very peculiar provision, Mr. Speaker, is the clause that provides under Clause 11. This is on conciliation in the event of a disagreement. Remember earlier on, this House, you gave communication on formation of a mediation committee because of the disagreement that arose out of the Division of Revenue bill. This particular act is stating that where there is disagreement, it doesn't matter. This is actually, the wording of it is, where the speakers of the Houses of Parliament are unable to reach a joint resolution on a question after invoking the provisions of subsection 1, the originating House may proceed with the consideration of the bill notwithstanding the disagreement. That particular proposal is making nonsense of the mediation process because the House, or rather the Speaker, can decide to say, look, it doesn't matter the fact that we are supposed to go for mediation, we will proceed to consider the bill notwithstanding that existing disagreement. And that is one of the reasons why the committee felt that instead of curing the lacuna that is in law, the bill seeks to disregard the role of one of the houses, either this House or the other House. And Mr. Speaker, when we have such a provision being put in law, it plays completely contrary to the provisions of Article 96 that gives this House unvetted a role and mandate to protect the Houses. As it is framed, Mr. Speaker, the bill generally violates the provisions of the Constitution that derogates in terms of the judicial pronouncements. You recall that we have had cases all the way to the Supreme Court. Some of them are pending. And indeed, as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, the cases have been suspended for the sake of facilitating negotiations in the two houses. And when this bill now is passed by the National Assembly, it is a direct indictment on the fact that the houses, the two houses, had desired to resolve the disputes which are before the court. In essence, Mr. Speaker, the position that has been taken by the National Assembly to pass this bill is a direct indictment on the pending cases, on the goodwill that this House had, and the goodwill that the leadership of this House had in considering an accommodation of negotiations prior to the cases being resolved by the court. One other very particular provision of this particular bill is the one that states that if one House has considered the comments and submissions by the public in the course of a public participation, another House is under no obligation to do public participation in the case of any particular legislative process that they are undertaking. And that, Mr. Speaker, is completely against the provisions of Article 118 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this is the provisions of clause. This is the part 5 of the bill under clause 19, subclause 6, where it says, in considering a bill or a matter on which a committee of a House of Parliament has conducted public participation, a committee of the second House may, A, elect not to undertake a similar exercise and rely on the findings of the committee of the first House. Mr. Speaker, the provisions of Article 118 of the Constitution gives it a mandatory term that before you consider any particular legislation, you must engage in public participation. By approving or passing this bill, we basically saying we are not going to be under an obligation to conduct public participation because the National Assembly could have or has already conducted public participation and have submitted a report. That, Mr. Speaker, is one aspect that we are saying the Constitution had provided for the public fully participating when it is dealing with matters to do with legislation and on aspects that the public are expected to participate. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, quite interesting, there is the provision that they have said we are supposed to participate in mediation or reconciliation or negotiating as the two houses in order to make sure that we arrive at a common ground when we are considering bills. But it has gone ahead under the miscellaneous provision, Mr. Speaker, to say that if by the report of the committee, let's say JLAC or any other committee, a recommendation is made to this House that judicial process is undertaken, members of that committee or an official of this House, whether from the Secretariat or otherwise, advises the House to go to court to protect the mandate of this House. Such a person commits an offense and they will be surcharged. Any cost that, for example, the Senate incurs in litigation will be charged upon that particular individual. Mr. Speaker, that is completely telling us that if we were to sit back as a House and decide that we must defend the mandate of the Senate in court, they will have committed an offense, and that offense, if it attracts a penalty, that penalty on our part will be met by the person who advised the House, whether it is a committee, whether it's a member elected, or whether it's a member of the Secretariat. Mr. Speaker, that is one such draconian provision, and it's something that I'm very sure it did not get into the consideration of the House. And if it did, indeed, then how low a House can go in giving such provisions in law, this is what the National Assembly gave us. This is under the provisions of Clause 20, Clause 26, 5 and 6, and in particular is 6, where it says that, this is very important, Mr. Speaker, and you will allow me to read so that the House and the members can understand the extent with which the mandate of this House was aimed at being curtailed. It says, the cost in respect of the wasteful expenditure. They have attempted to define what wasteful expenditure means under provisions of subclause 5. The cost in respect of the wasteful expenditure under subsection 5 shall, in accordance with a prescribed procedure, be recovered without delay from a public or a state officer, including a holder of a political office. In this case, whether they are members of this House, who are members of certain committees, or who are members of certain groupings that have decided to advise the House lawfully to take action in court, or who caused the House of Parliament not to comply with the requirement of this section. That, Mr. Speaker, is a provision that I do not think, even if we desired to say we are under an obligation to ensure that we enact laws and therefore we amend the provisions of this bill, that is one such provision the committee could not appreciate and understand why the membership of the National Assembly could include that provision in a bill and allows it to go through the process until it is passed and forwarded to this House for consideration. Mr. Speaker, as I had indicated earlier on, in principle, this bill seeks to fundamentally restrict the legislative and representative mandate of the Senate as provided for by Article 94, 96, 109, 110, 112, and 114 of the Constitution in almost 80% of its provision. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the bill violates the Constitution by derogating from provisions of the Constitution and judicial pronouncements on the procedure for introduction and proceedings of legislation in the two houses. The case in point, Mr. Speaker, is the existing cases in the Court of Appeal and the High Court, where certain pronouncements have been made with regards to at what point does a bill, or rather at what point does a question arise as to whether a bill is a money bill or not a money bill. This particular bill is completely derogating against that particular pronouncement. And as I have already submitted part 118 or clause 118 of the Constitution of Kenya that mandates public participation has been taken away by the provision that if one house has considered this, the other house has got no obligation to do that. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, the provisions, as I've said, that restricts us to exercise the right as a house or as individual members to advise the house on certain actions that can require going before a court of law has been restricted. That in itself is equally constitutional. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as a whole, however much we would have desired to support and amend this bill so that if it means going for mediation and enhance the bicameral relationship, this bill is fundamentally wrong, fundamentally unconstitutional, and unfair to the provisions of the Constitution and the mandate of this House. And therefore, I do not support the passage of this bill. I do not support the provisions of this bill. And I ask that this bill be rejected and it be taken to mediation so that the proper mandate of this House, the provisions of Article 96 and the provisions of Article 94 and 93 are protected. Let the bill be drafted as it had previously been requested by the joint session of the members of this House and the National Assembly, led by the respective speakers, and where the Office of the Attorney General was involved, so that a whole inclusive bill be drafted that contained the text that protects the mandate of this House and the mandate that this House has been given by the representation that is in the House. Mr. Speaker, I therefore reject and ask the membership of this House to read the report so that they internalize and understand the need of making sure that the only way that we will protect this House is by making sure that whatever legislation that is passed or debated and passed in this House are those that protect the mandate of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Chair Jailak. Next is Senator Chalgay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I would have expected even Senator Sifuna to take note that I have worn an orange tie, and as the SGO of ODM, it should at least be fair today, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know, we need in our standing orders, when the chair and the committee rejects a bill, what becomes of it? But let me give my Solomonic injection to this conversation, Mr. Speaker, by saying, Mr. Speaker, I know today in the afternoon you had a communication where we are going for mediation under Division of Revenue. Mr. Speaker, what we are even requesting for counties is modest. It is only 415 billion, Mr. Speaker, against 4.2 trillion budget. While at least we accept that there are challenges with running of counties, including of wastage of resources and corruption, that should not be a reason why we need to deny counties the money, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this bicameral has come a long way from 2010 to now. I know, Mr. Speaker, I didn't see the need of this bill because the Constitution and legal precedents, even on petition number 3 of the Senate Republic in 2013 on division of revenue was pronounced itself as Supreme Court, that Senate must be part of budget making process because it is there in the Constitution. From the word go, I didn't see the need why we should have this legislative proposal, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this legislative proposal has been made in a manner likely to make Senate become a rubber stamp of the lower house, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, Senate in its rightful place should and must be respected, Mr. Speaker. We are not an appendage of the National Assembly or any other entity, Mr. Speaker. We are elected by the people. We are entrenched in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the law, when a bill comes to the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, the life of a bill as it is in the Constitution 2010, if it originates in the 8th House, if it is passed in the 8th House with amendments, Mr. Speaker, it goes for mediation. I don't see the reason why we introduce, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in that note, I want to celebrate my successor, Senator Hilary Sigei, that is now coming of age. Because if you remember my era, I used to shoot straight from the hip. And that is why by the third year, as the Senate jailer chairperson, I was de-whipped. Because if you look at my history, and the answered can bear witness, my prowess in running the JLAC in the last session, even Senator Manzo and yourself, even the JLAC at that time, and I know the chair of JLAC, Senator Cheptumo, was there, and we worked closely. I want to encourage him. Being a chair of JLAC is not easy sometimes, because even we went ahead and investigated enforced disappearance and extrajudicial killings, Mr. Speaker. So it is not, but I want to thank the Senate JLAC chairman and the committee for providing guidance. And this is leadership. This is now leadership. And we will take cue on the report of the committee and reject this bill in totality, in total. I don't know whether there is such a name in English. In total, we shall reject this bill, Mr. Speaker. Because I'm happy, at least with the secretariat that we have, Mr. Speaker. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to celebrate, because these are our finest drafters and legislative drafters in this House. Dr. Johnson Okello, Director of Legal Services, Mr. Speaker, for being elected the President of the Multinational Association of Legislative Council, the first African jurist to sit. That body was formed 40 years ago, Mr. Speaker. But we have Dr. Johnson Okello, our Director of Legal Services, who holds PhD in law and has practiced law for our legal practice for over 2 decades, Mr. Speaker. I know where he comes from. Having education is not a problem. But we celebrate him, Mr. Speaker. For us who have interacted with Dr. Johnson Okello, Director of Legal Services of the Senate, he is a man of immense knowledge and wisdom and guidance at any given opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, allow me to celebrate him, wish him well, as he serves for the next 2 years as the President of the Multinational Association of Legislative Council. Mr. Speaker, by merit, these are people who should be occupying the highest offices in the land if we are using meritocracy as a yardstick. But since we use other measurements, Mr. Speaker, like night running and other issues, then, Mr. Speaker, it's always a complicated story altogether, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to make 5 comments. And thank you also, Mr. Speaker, and your office for supporting our secretariat. We are saying, Mr. Speaker, our secretariat are the best. Dr. Johnson Okello has led, and I know a number of secretariat from our clerk, Mr. Nyekenye, and the deputies and the table office here, Mr. Speaker. We always celebrate and have tremendous respect, Mr. Speaker, to all our staff, from even the gatemen, from the people who serve us tea and food, all our staff, even the sergeant-at-arms are doing a tremendous. And I know these are some total, Mr. Speaker, of what you are doing in terms of leadership of the Senate and the Parliament of Kenya. But also, you should not also gag us when we have also reservations on some of the services in the House, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, when you look at clause number 7, and Mr. Speaker, how can you say, this is Article 118 on public participation. How can you say if one house has sold a public participation, the other house should not hold? It is a constitutional requirement that public participation by members of public must be done. Because that is what we get the second opinion, even on finance bill now, Mr. Speaker. Public participation is mandatory. Because you saw there were advisors that were being paid 1 billion. But the only advice they gave us was to add 10 shillings to a loaf of bread, Mr. Speaker, which is causing you and crime, Mr. Speaker. That is why we need to go back to the people so that they do public participation. It is in bad faith to say if National Assembly has all our public participation, we should not all our public participation. We have a symbiotic relationship. We are distinct, but we must do the job. If it is National Assembly, let Senate do public participation, let the National Assembly do public participation. I remember, Mr. Speaker, even on the sugar bill that is under mediation, when National Assembly did public participation, they didn't switch ram areas. What we should be proposing is that if a National Assembly has public participation in Makueni, then now Senate can do it in Siaya, for example, or they do it in Nairobi, we do it in Nandi, we do it in Figa, Mr. Speaker, and I think or Bomet, or even Meru, so that we can complement each other, but it's not a competition, Mr. Speaker. So on this one, on the public participation, Mr. Speaker, this is the fall flat on its face and must fall by their own sword, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have seen in this bill, Mr. Speaker, on the joint sitting, why would you call us joint? You know the South Africa Parliament, Mr. Speaker, when they have a presidential address, SONA, South Africa National Address, they use joint sitting rules. Why are you calling us for a sitting rule, for a joint sitting, and let's say you use National Assembly, standing orders, and then you make you the speaker to be like deputy speaker of a National Assembly speaker. The Speaker, this bill has been drafted with an intention to demean and disparage and eradicate the standing of the Senate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is why as a Senate, we can pride ourselves. So the first time we have said we want money for counties, 415 billion, Mr. Speaker. And we stand by that. It will not change anytime soon. But the other day when they were handling issue of fertilizer, they could not even rise up to the occasion and put the wrongs into right, Mr. Speaker. Even in the process that under one care, I don't want to revisit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know this issue of county government, it does not concern the issue of under section on the certificate of joint resolution. I think this is something we canvass in the Supreme Court in our matter, where we said we must have a concurrence signed by the second house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on clause number 10, whenever the Speaker of the second house disagrees with the question raised and contemplated, the Speaker backs to the Speaker of the originating house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my worry is on clause 10.3. If the originating Speaker causes the bill to be modified to accommodate the observations of the Speaker of the second house. So now we have removed legislation from members of parliament to the two speakers. Because now that is dangerous. This can create draconian laws. Because if the speakers will modify the bill and give the house, they are also human beings. They can mislead the country and create even draconian laws, Mr. Speaker. Because if we allow you, Mr. Speaker, we know you are a person of Solomonic organized, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we always have tremendous respect to the Speaker. But the law does not envisage a Speaker or speakers to be part of lawmaking process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of clause number 12, the relevant departmental committee of the assembly or member to be at liberty to adopt the bill and the bill be deemed to have originated pursuant to the standing Article 109(5) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to report to this House, there are many bills that National Assembly has become a graveyard of our bills. So, Speaker, under Article 110(3), they always refer our bills to the Parliamentary Budget Office and their departmental committees and declare the bill that originated from the Senate as money bill. And therefore, it should not originate from the Senate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have lost many bills, even amendment. I made an amendment, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the issues of diaspora. The National Assembly are telling me that it is not a function of the Senate. So I'm asking, a county like Busia is bordering Uganda. Does it mean it cannot be part of the international community or affected by international law? County like Mombasa is bordering other countries like Turkana, Kajiado. Does it mean it cannot be affected by the international law, Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, on this one, clause number 12.3, we need to be careful because members will be struggling hard to develop bill, Mr. Speaker. You approve. When it goes, they send it and declare money bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 50 point, or shall appoint its members of the mediation. I think that is straightforward, Mr. Speaker, because in any case, like the way you did today, Mr. Speaker, like the way you did today is just a procedure that the Constitution has provided. Clause number 16, I'll be very quick. A committee of one house with the written permission of the speakers of the Senate and National Assembly co-other to deliberate on matters of mutual interest and concern. Mr. Speaker, my worry is on the clause 16.4. The National Assembly and the Senate shall, upon commencement of this act, prescribe under their respective standing orders for the joint rules for the conduct of the sitting. Mr. Speaker, the houses may on motion prescribe rules, and then it goes, clause number 17. At any joint sitting of the houses, the standing orders of the National Assembly shall apply with such modification and variation as of the Speaker of National Assembly may consider necessary or appropriate. So we can have a joint sitting of State of the Nation address. But what this law tells us, that the standing orders shall apply, belong to National Assembly. This is dangerous. And it is a joint sitting. I have used an example of Parliament of South Africa. Whenever they have a joint sitting through SONA, they always join rules, Mr. Speaker. So what is the purpose of clause 17? It is to demean us, to make us like MCS, Mr. Speaker, which we should not allow. I'm not saying MCS are lesser, but the standard of Senate is a bit high, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, clause 17.3, the speakers of the Houses of Parliament shall enforce any directions given during a joint sitting in relation to the conduct of member of Parliament in accordance with the application provision of the National Assembly standing orders. Mr. Speaker, you heard the other day, this is in the public record, when I questioned about the Bunge Towers, the Speaker of the lower house wanted to refer me to the Committee of Powers and Privileges. So if the joint sitting was a prime, Mr. Speaker, you as truly could have been crucified like Jesus Christ. Yet I'm doing the Lord's work or pointing out that does not work, Mr. Speaker. Like, for example, when we are using the VIP lift, you meet with tea, tissue papers, chapatis on your way, yet it has been written VIP lift, Mr. Speaker. So whenever we point out how would have been crucified, is Speaker Moses Wetangula, because I questioned and he said that I cannot access certificate of occupation because simply I am nobody. So, Speaker, I would be in problems, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, clause number 18, the speakers of the Houses of Parliament may, in consultation with leaders of majority party and minority, arrange for a joint sitting for purposes of address, which is okay. It is in our standing orders. I don't know why it is here. Yet our standing orders said if we want anybody, including the president, to address this house, it is the prerogative of the minority side and majority side to agree. So why are we becoming prescriptive? Mr. Speaker, lastly, on public participation, clause number 19, I think I agree with the chair of JLAC. This is violation of Article 118 on public participation. I think we are considering public participation bill, Mr. Speaker. Failure to views during the is not invalid. Mr. Speaker, how can we say, Mr. Speaker, you remember Kiambu, the case of Kiambu CC, Mr. Speaker, and others were taken to court. In the finance bill of 2013, the Kiambu County Executive then did not do public participation. For the first time, a ruling was made. Mr. Speaker, can you call the Deputy Speaker out of order for distracting me while I'm submitting? Or for consulting loudly? Mr. Speaker,
what's your point of order, Senator Kaduri?
No, I forgive Senator Chalage. He is my junior, so proceed, Senator Chalage.
That's your point of order. Deputy Speaker, you're out of order. General Gay, proceed.
The Deputy Speaker, I'm giving him instant justice the way he does. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of, we need to be careful on this issue of public participation. I was using the case of Kiambu case in 2013, where they did public finance bill without public participation. The courts have made themselves clear. How can you say here, the Committee of Parliament shall consider the views from the participating, but you go ahead and say it is not an offense not to consider? It's self-defeating. There is a precedent that has been set in place, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, this bill, I agree with you and your committee that this bill does not hold any water, Mr. Speaker. We cannot be part. Mr. Speaker, in bicameral parliament like in the US, and I want to encourage my members of this House that in my constitutional amendment bill of 2024, I have tried and distinguished the role of bicameral. That Senate should be given the same powers as the Senate of the US, where impeachment is confirmed, appointments of the president, including cabinet, and many other decisions, Mr. Speaker. In fact, for example, why would the war emergency be declared by National Assembly? It should be by Parliament, because that's a serious issue that affects even counties, Mr. Speaker. On this bicameral issue, I agree with you and your committee that, in fact, in the second reading, we reject this bill in totality. Let it go to mediation, but I don't see why we should prescribe something that is already in place, Mr. Speaker, going into the future, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, I know, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of bicameral, I'm happy that some of the House leadership members are in US with the President. They should visit the Congress and the Senate and learn a few things of bicameral. Because especially the majority leader of National Assembly, because I heard him talking the other day on division of revenue, can he take a time off to learn how bicameral system operates, so that before you start fighting the other house, Mr. Speaker, and I want to assure Senator Sifuna, the reason some of us are invited to Mogotio for goat eating is because we are the real people who plan many things that run around in this country. Others are just, we travel to those countries, Senator Sifuna, and us, we have even interest in those countries, so you don't need to travel to see many things. It is better to go to Mogotio, and you should be happy that I always go to Mogotio because I save the public money. And like when I'm traveling abroad. That's another issue is trying to bring, Mr. Speaker, that you should rule Senator Sifuna out of order. I have never used a private jet, unless other people have used, but I have never used, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you need to protect me. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, let us take the position you have taken. Mr. Speaker, let us take the position you have taken and reject this bill in totality. Thank you very much, and I support.
Senator Cherargei, thank you very much. Senator Manzo Kitonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity to look at this bill, and I think Dr. Oburu, Senator for Siaya, and the Senator for Meru understands the genesis of this bill. When we were in the National Assembly, immediately after 2013, there was this culture which developed of National Assembly bashing the Senate almost whatever time or opportunity arose. And similarly, the Senate will bash the National Assembly. So eventually, some ideas developed. That's why you see then this bill of dealing with bicameral relations was developed, but I don't think it initially came out in good faith. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya is very clear, and one cannot seek to amend it or direct it through a bill of parliament. So this bill has come to the Senate in bad faith. And although once we reject it, there is a possibility of mediation, I don't think that mediation should lie at all. The moment we reject a bill at the Senate, that marks the death of that bill. Any efforts to revive it are also unconstitutional. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, the role of Senate is clear in the Constitution. And luckily for myself and the Senator for Meru, we never disrespected this House. And at all material times, all the years we were in the National Assembly. And we were also with Senator Kipsang, and eventually found ourselves here. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, if you compare the two houses, I just want to be kind enough. It feels much different to be in the Senate. It's a little bit apprehensive at the National Assembly, very unsure whether you'll have an opportunity to speak. And in fact, many people queue at 2:30 and it gets to 7 and they have not had an opportunity to speak. And that can run for months, Mr. Speaker. You know what that does to a member, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Manzo.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Karen, the leadership of the House the other day made a recommendation to the effect that we do not do what you're just doing when someone is on the floor. You are on phone. Kindly respect the House and allow Senator Manzo to be heard in silence. Proceed, Senator Manzo. Senator Karen,
thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill had its origins in the wrong footing. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the Parliament after 2017, there was a little bit of improvement of those frosty relationships. And in fact, it was Howard leadership which used to lead this bashing from the lower house to the upper house. And that will go unchecked. And it's like, up to the time the speakers agreed now to be comparing notes under Article 110 as to the status of a bill, whether it's a finance bill or not. And in fact, I want to agree with the Senator Fernandi. And that's why you see some of us are not very anxious to process bills, especially if you're in the opposition. You begin a law here, and as soon as it is passed here, when it gets to the National Assembly, it finds its gravesite. That happened to Senator Zani's bill on cooperatives. She really worked on it, but when it got to the National Assembly, it underwent a natural death in that now that she's no longer in Parliament, it is very difficult to revive it. But I've seen there's a new cooperatives law which has come to the House, and I think that is a blessing. I originated a bill from the National Assembly in relation to snake bites, because you see the people from Lower Eastern and the coastal regions go through a lot of snake bites and a lot of people die. And the snakes have gone unchecked by KWS. Nor has even KWS provided the necessary first aid medications on snake bites. And that bill never, even got to the Senate. Time went out despite a lot of pushing for 5 years. We have passed a lot of bills here. But I can assure you, as soon as they get to the National Assembly, they will never be processed, Mr. Speaker. It begins with that question. Is it a money bill? And almost every bill has a money element. And unfortunately, out of that biasness, then it's declared as a money bill and should have originated initially from the National Assembly. And the effort of a member from the Senate ends up being futility. And again also, Mr. Speaker, I had a lot of hope when our truly Senator Wetangula became the Speaker of the National Assembly. I thought that would really increase because he understands this House and he understands the National House. The National Assembly has been in both houses. And I believe he is going to be very instrumental in bringing the right interpretations. And in fact, during his tenure, those attacks have reduced. And again also, with our Speaker now and the Deputy Speaker, the Speaker Kingi is a very experienced lawyer in this country and also experienced administrator, having been in the National Assembly, having been a cabinet minister, and having now been a governor and then he ends up in this house. So he too carries the experiences of the two houses, and that has given a lot of peace into a lot of things, especially when it comes to where the two speakers have to sit and agree on a way forward of a bill. But that notwithstanding, I don't know how this unfortunate bill has found itself getting voted at the National Assembly and getting forwarded here. I believe the two very experienced lawyers should have ruled it unconstitutional on the face of it. But again, I've seen this practice, Mr. Speaker, over the years, whereby speakers allow the houses to have their day. Instead of making the decision for us, they allow us to make the decision. And I think we are now at the right position to make a decision. And I believe the decision we will make in this house will not be contested elsewhere, not even the National Assembly. And only one issue I want to point out, and I don't know what Senator Sifuna thinks of this. When we were dealing with the Aussie bill, we raised an issue of public participation of this house and said wherever public participation takes place in another house, when a bill comes to this house, then we should do public participation. And I expect when a bill comes from here and goes to the National Assembly, I expect public participation from the National Assembly in accordance with Article 118. But there was a very unusual situation, and I guess that's why we are at the Constitutional Court on the issue to do with the Housey bill, that now when it came here, we never really did public participation. Probably would have gotten more ideas and improved it, but that is in the past, Mr. Speaker. We left it to the courts now that it has already become law, and we actually have a hearing date to litigate on the same. Mr. Speaker, it is important when the law is followed on the face of it, and especially the Constitution. When the constitutional provisions are as clear as they are now in relation to the bicameral status, and when the Constitution itself, the Constitution, its spirit, and the letter of the law, Mr. Speaker, as it was enacted by the people. Mr. Speaker, the people of Kenya brought the 2010 Constitution. Anybody wanting to amend it, they know there are provisions which go back to the people through a referendum, and their constitution, their provisions the two houses can also amend. But I can assure you from my experience, there has been very many constitutional bills seeking to amend the Constitution, and they have never met the threshold required of 2/3, even from the National Assembly. They never made it here. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that should be the standard. Therefore, I want to support you and the Committee of Justice that this bill fails the constitutional test and should die here, get buried here in the Senate, and should never be resurrected at anyone's time. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I oppose.
Senator Mutinda Maureen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to begin by giving my disappointments for this type of bill in this time and era. As a country, we pride in being a bicameral parliament. Unlike other countries, like when you go to Uganda, it's only National Assembly. But we are privileged to have these two houses. And actually, let me further relay my disappointment, because if the Senate was not there and we only had the National Assembly, putting in mind the positions that we have as nominated senators on this side of this house, then in one way or the other, this room will not be in place. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to your contribution earlier as the chair of JLAC, and I want to put and compliment the whole committee of JLAC on a very good job, well done, on how keen you've been able to look into this particular bill. Because in a nutshell, what this particular bill is trying to do, for one, is trying to demean the powers of the Senate, ignoring where these powers come from, Mr. Speaker. Because these powers, Mr. Speaker, we did not just wake up and we found them. There was a process. There was a constitutional process that took place for us to be where we are. As colleagues have said very clearly, Article 95 and Article 96 of the Constitution has stipulated very clearly the roles of the two houses, the role of the National Assembly and the role of Senate. It has defined the exact role. Hence, each and every senator among the 67 knows their mandate, their role. So why then do we need to embark, waste government and taxpayers' resources on trying further to try and do what has been done? Mr. Speaker, I've looked at this bill, especially Article 3, in terms of the objectives of this act. And from A to J, all the classes that have been mentioned here, they are ranging from Article 109.4, Article 110.3, Article 110.3, Article 107.2, Article 109.2 of the Constitution of Kenya, meaning and indicating that all these have been factored, all these have been considered. Mr. Speaker, looking at the issues that have been raised in this particular bill, it's a monotony that the National Assembly wants to acquire. Yet the Constitution is very clear. We are the upper house. I want to give an example with the county that I represent. That is the county of Nairobi. Our elected senator of Nairobi, has 17 constituencies. Now tell me how one person in the National Assembly, mostly the members, who only has one constituency, wants to come and demean a member who has over 17 constituencies. Case example in Nairobi, 85 wards to be more specific. That's trying to ignore what this house is doing. We are representatives of the county, and we have our mandate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yourself, myself, among other few senators, we sit in the House Business Committee. And it is sad because now I can tell the root cause of all these problems, because when we joined Senate and started serving this particular committee, we have court cases that are not only new court cases, but cases that have been there even before. And an indication that this is something that has existed for the longest. And it's the high time, actually, through the leadership of both houses, there should be closure as far as these issues are concerned, as far as these court cases are concerned, because they are court cases among, both houses. It's a high time we put a stop, because if we can be at this time discussing a bicameral bill at this particular time, then it's because we've given room for that. And I want to challenge the leadership of both houses to take the lead and ensure that some of these issues are sorted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 118, as mentioned, it's very clear, and public participation is a very key role, and it's a constitutional role, because it says that Parliament shall conduct its business in an open manner. Its sittings and those of its committee shall be open to public. I'm happy with although it has not taken off, but with the current Bunge Towers, there is provision for, live airings of the committee proceedings for all committees, both National Assembly and Senate, for the public to be able to see and be able to understand the work that goes on as far as both Senate and National Assembly are concerned. So these provisions are already there. Public participation was not given according to what the committee has mentioned, And then, so if this process was not conducted, then even why are we having this bill at this particular point, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the way the bill has been set, talking about an individual who brings about an issue, either a committee or that particular member raises these issues, then they will be committing an offense. Mr. Speaker, those are what we call mere threats. Threats within the bill itself. Because with this kind of provisions that then threaten the members, I don't find them constitutional from where I sit, Mr. Speaker. And it is sad that we can have bills trying to give threat instead of offering long-term solutions from where we are. Mr. Speaker, we've seen that our budget as Senate is very low. It's actually the lowest budget in the whole Parliament. And some of these costs, like the court cases, you know, the costs are bared by the Senate. And this is an unnecessary cost because you look at some of the issues, they are already in place within the Constitution, and if they are taken care of, we do not need to have legal costs that are still in place and need to be taken care of. Otherwise, those funds should be used in other ways and ensuring that we have maximum participation, maximum public participation as per Article 118 of the Constitution. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg to disagree completely with this particular bill. And if you would allow, because you know soon we are going on recess, that if today you could even close on this bill, we vote on it as early as tomorrow, and focus on the bills that will be able to help us move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Tabitha. Senator Edwin Sifuna.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. First of all, allow me to commend members of this committee. As you know, the committee is chaired by a former classmate of mine, Honorable Speaker. And it is such bold decisions that make me proud of being a member of this House, that we can look at legislation objectively and say we have issues with this proposed legislation and that we cannot support it. In fact, some of us have taken a position on previous legislation that has been sponsored to this House or originated from the National Assembly, that if a bill is unconstitutional, you should not even entertain the thought of subjecting it to a third reading where you then introduce amendments, because our position in the minority is that you cannot introduce any amendments to breathe life into an unconstitutional bill, and that an unconstitutional bill should be dealt with forthright from the beginning as an unconstitutional bill. So, Honorable Speaker, I see the members of this committee here are people that I would take their position very seriously. I see that Senator Catherine Muma is a member here, Senator Veronica Maina, and of course Andrew Omtata Okoiti, people whose advice on the constitutionality or otherwise of any piece of legislation I take very seriously. Honorable Speaker, there are 3 or 4 examples that I wanted to give, and I saw that the chair of the committee himself ran us through as a House some of those unconstitutional provisions, and this is what led to the conclusion by the committee that we as a House cannot abide by some of these proposals. But I want to challenge the committee that after we reject this bill, I think one of the problems we allow ourselves to get into, Honorable Speaker, is to allow such bills to originate from the National Assembly. How do they beat us to originating such legislation? In the historical relationship between these two houses, the Senate has always complained of being the one that is being sidelined, the one that is being undermined at every turn. Then if we are going to have legislation to repair that relationship, we as the wearer of the shoe, honestly, Honorable Chair, should be the ones originating the legislation that we believe will cure this particular problem. And I know that a bill originating from this House to cure this relationship would be far much purer, because we are motivated in this House by the desire to see these constitutional institutions working and nothing else. I would trust this House to prescribe the medicine to this problem than any other place. So, Honorable Chair, even as we argue for the rejection of this bill, even as we reject this bill, I would very much challenge the members of the JLAC committee to, with haste, put out our own version of a bill to guide the relationships between these two houses. It's unfortunate that the leader of majority is not in the House with us today. Honorable Cheruyot is somebody who has walked this journey of the relationship of these two houses, including the interpretation of Article 110, the matter that is before the Supreme Court, and what needs to be done. And he has cautioned us that during debate of this matter, we should not make it as if the entire National Assembly is in fact at odds with the Senate. And the best example, Honorable Speaker, was during the debate on the Division of Revenue Bill that was passed by this House, where it was clear that, in fact, it is only a small section of members of the National Assembly who think that everything should be perceived through the lenses of conflict between these two houses. But a vast majority of the members of the National Assembly, and you will see this demonstrated, Honorable Speaker, when we go to mediation over the Division of Revenue Bill, there are people who actually believe in devolution and making sure that these institutions of devolution, including the Senate, work. Honorable Speaker, as you yourself or the chair of the committee rightfully pointed out, if you look at a provision such as the one that you referred to, or the chair referred to, relating to when a dispute can be said to have arisen or when it needs to be dealt with in accordance to Article 110(3). Honorable Speaker, Section 6 of that bill wants to rewrite Article 110(3) of the Constitution, because the wording of Article 110(3), and I have my copy of the Constitution here, presupposes that any dispute will be dealt with prior to any of the bills being introduced in any or either of the houses. But what Section 6 of the bill proposes to do is to rewrite that to mean a bill can actually go before the House and undergo the first reading, but then to move the time frame at which point we can raise objection to that bill or declare a dispute under Article 110(3) to just before the second reading of the bill. Because, Mr. Speaker, the resolution of those questions needs to happen jointly and in the language of the Constitution under Article 110(3) before either House considers a bill. Now, I don't know what the National Assembly defines consideration as, or when consideration of a bill begins. But surely, Honorable Speaker, by the time you are introducing a bill at the first reading, that is consideration of the bill, and all matters must have been resolved before that is done. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, you yourself have made reference, and honorable colleagues who have spoken before me, to the provisions of Section 19(6) of the bill on the question of public participation. Again, Honorable Speaker, under Article 118 of the Constitution on public access and participation, there is a requirement, Honorable Speaker, that every single piece of legislation that is being considered by either House go through public participation. In fact, my argument, Honorable Speaker, is it doesn't matter where this bill originates. If a bill is introduced into this House from the National Assembly, my thinking is that as far as the Senate is concerned, as far as the Senate as a legislative body is concerned, that is the first time we are interacting with that bill, and therefore a key component of our consideration and passage of that bill is public participation, so that we as a House can never have an excuse to abdicate that responsibility and go through a bill or any proposal before this House without subjecting it to the constitutional requirement of public participation. When Senator Maanzo was speaking, he made reference to the housing bill that was introduced from the National Assembly as well. And Honorable Speaker, the Hansard will bear me witness that we in the minority...
Senator Sifuna, just hold. Senator Karen, the chair earlier on cautioned you against what you're doing. You're out of order. Proceed, Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, I was saying that if you look at the Hansard, we in the minority, during debate on the housing bill, were of the opinion that, in fact, because housing is a devolved function, because it is a legislative mandate of this House to deal with questions of housing, we needed to subject that bill to our own independent public participation to find out the views of Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. And the word of caution, of course, results from the fact that previously we have seen very shambolic so-called public participations before the National Assembly. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, one of our biggest shame as a nation was where public participation is conducted on a bill before the National Assembly, specifically the Finance Bill of 2023, 99% of the people appear before the committee, relevant committee, and oppose the provisions of that bill. And in the end, all of those proposals, all of those suggestions from ordinary Kenyans, from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, from civil society, from all those quarters are ignored and the bill is passed anyway. And we hear leaders in the National Assembly pronounce themselves at funerals and other public events that the bill will pass, not even a comma will be amended. I am happy, Honorable Speaker, that given the noise that we made, especially as members of the opposition or the minority in this House, I am seeing stories in the newspaper that members of the National Assembly now are insisting on being taken through provisions of bills before they vote. I think that is progress, although we have set ourselves an extremely low bar where a member of parliament can admit to passing a bill without reading it. But now that we are reading, I think when we go to the election in 2027, we might have a different story. So public participation, and the courts have spoken on this matter, Honorable Speaker, that it cannot be a cosmetic exercise just to check boxes and say we have complied with the law on public participation. It has to be substantial, that the views of the people must reflect in the final document. We as a House and even the National Assembly can never avail ourselves of power to do away with the views of the people on any particular legislation. Honorable Speaker, there is also a very interesting provision under Section 20, subsection 5 and subsection 6 of the bill. And Honorable Speaker, allow me to just read this one out verbatim, because I believe this is meant to intimidate professional staff of the Senate and the National Assembly from actually advising this House to go and avail itself of the options of going to court whenever there is a matter that we believe is not right. And Honorable Speaker, we have enough matters in court to prove that that is also an option that is available for us as a House, because although we are the lawmakers in the land, injustice can also be visited on us, and especially on the Senate as a House. So where, Mr. Speaker, you have a provision of a bill saying under Section 20, subsection 5, that if a court is satisfied that a House of Parliament in an attempt to resolve a dispute has not exhausted all the mechanisms of alternative dispute resolution as contemplated under this section and refers the dispute back for the reason that the House of Parliament has not complied with this section, the expenditure incurred by that House of Parliament in approaching the court shall be regarded as wasteful expenditure. Then it goes on to say under subsection 6 that the cost in respect of wasteful expenditure under subsection 5 shall, in accordance with a prescribed procedure, be recovered without delay from a public or state officer, including a holder of a political office, who caused the House of Parliament not to comply with the requirements of this section. Honorable Speaker, you and I have the privilege of sitting on the Senate Business Committee. You have seen numerous examples of attempts to resolve matters internally that I have failed. Because of various issues, Honorable Speaker, I can see the Senator Mutinda knows exactly what I'm talking about. It is possible for us to fail to agree internally. And even when attempts are made, there are people who sabotage attempts to resolve matters between the two houses, amicably. So if an officer of the Senate advises the Senate that at the stage at which we are, the only place that we can find a resolution is in the courts, and then they say, oh, by the way, it is Sifuna, as a holder of a political office, as elected member of the SBC, who refused mediation and who said or insisted that we must go to court. And they recover the money from me, Honorable Speaker. This is meant to intimidate people from availing themselves of the option and exercise of a right to approach the courts for dispute resolution. And therefore, on the basis of that, Honorable Speaker, I will be objecting. In fact, today, we received very good news as leaders of political parties. And I am sure even the Secretary Generals of all the other political parties are happy that the High Court has agreed with us that the National Assembly cannot just unilaterally, through a supplementary budget, go and remove all the money that has been allocated to the political parties fund. I am very happy with Justice Muita. He has said that money, once appropriated by the National Assembly, cannot be again reduced through an appropriation act, as happened with the first appropriation act or supplementary budget of September of 2023, that reduced the political parties fund by almost 800 million shillings, Honorable Speaker, when we only had 1.6 billion shillings on that fund. So I am hoping that going forward, I have taken the liberty of sharing that decision with the members of the National Assembly, at least those from my party who I know sit on the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and on the Budget Committee of the National Assembly. They need to take note of what the court has said. One of the most frustrating things, Honorable Speaker, is that at least for us at ODM and with the political parties fund, we have more than enough court orders, Honorable Speaker. We have a court order that I awarded as 6 billion shillings a few years back. It is now 10 billion shillings. Nobody is bothered about honoring that court order. So when we hear people pontificate out there that they are a rule of law government, and yet they have active court orders that they are ignoring, we know these are hypocrites. So on this particular one, Honorable Speaker, I want to support the committee that in fact we cannot have a situation where our members of the Secretariat are threatened with sanction for advising this House to go to court when there is obvious injustice that has been meted on this particular House. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, and this is a matter that Honorable Gerard Gay, the Senator for Nandi, spoke about, on this question of joint sittings. And this is why I have always pleaded with my colleagues in this House that when matters such as this come before us, we must show a united front as senators. When you see a member of the National Assembly disparaging the entire Senate, it includes you. Honorable Speaker, what right does the National Assembly have to say that in a joint sitting we will be subject to the rules or the standing orders of the National Assembly? Yet it is a joint sitting. In fact, the fair thing to do, and I'm sure if these rules or these proposals originated from the Senate, we would have special joint sitting rules that accommodate all those, both houses. Honorable Speaker, as you know, I don't attend those joint sessions because they are chaired by Honorable Moses Wetangula. And if Gerard Gay thinks that, maybe the Speaker of the National Assembly to him, I can assure you that when it comes to me as Sifuna, I would even receive harsher punishment. I have seen some people, Honorable Speaker, online, proposing that maybe during the debate of the finance bill, I should go there and grab the budget and the bill, the finance bill, and run away with it like happened in some country in Asia. Those people don't know the Speaker of the National Assembly. I would be expelled from Parliament for 5 years without even thinking. So, Honorable Speaker, we want the same rules that we are used to debate on here in the Senate should be applied during joint sessions, because it essentially means that we as members of the Senate have to start learning the rules of the National Assembly, yet we are not members of the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, and by the way, those rules are not necessarily too different, but there are some small differences here and there. And I'm sure you have seen even here, members struggling with our own rules here. So imagine subjecting some of these members who just shout point of order for nothing to the rules in the National Assembly. So, Honorable Speaker, to protect the slow learners in the House, the people who are still acclimatizing with the standing orders 2 years down the line. Honorable Speaker, you cannot subject these members to the rules in the National Assembly. They will fare far worse than they have been doing for the past 2 years here. And you can see, Honorable Speaker, that when you speak about bonds, the old people start crying, thinking you are talking about them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I oppose this bill.
Thank you, Senator Sifuna. Senator Munigi Alex Munye.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Mimi napinga mjadala ambaye unahusu mamlaka ya Senate na mambo ya Parliament. Kwa sababu, Bwana Spika, wakati tulienda kwa uchaguzi, kila mmoja katika Kenya anajua alichagua senator, na pia tukajua akachagua wajumbe ambaye ni wale wa chini. Yangu, Bwana Spika, kitu ya kwanza ni kusema tuko na majimbo mandogo 290 ambaye inaakilishwa na wajumbe, na pia tuko na majimbo makubwa 47 na ambayo majimbo iko na magavana, na kasi ya au majimbo madogo huwa inaakilishwa na mjumbe mmoja, na kama jimbo kama la Embu liko na majimbo madogo 4, na jimbo na Nairobi liko na majimbo 17, hata kuna majimbo mengine kama jimbo la Kiambu iko na majimbo 12. Kwa hivyo ni aibu kubwa sana kwa majimbo wale ile inaongozwa na waheshimiwa, wamekuwa na mambo, wako na hasira na ile kazi. Sisi majimbo 47 tunafanya kazi, na tunajua wale watu ile kazi wanafanya, wanapatua pesa nyingi, ambayo unakuta kama jimbo dogo moja inaakilishwa na mjumbe moja inapata shilingi milioni 160, na pia pesa ya parapara milioni 60, na marufuku mengine inapatikana katika pale kwa ile budget, na ile kazi inafaa afanye ni ya kulipia watoto wa msingi na wa sekondari pesa, na tunaiunga hiyo mambo yote wanafanya. Kazi nyingine ya ile pesa ni mambo ya kutengeneza parapara, ambazo sile parapara wamekuwa wakipigana wakisema wanafanya kazi zote. Ni aibu kubwa sana kwa sababu sisi tukiwa maseneta atuangalie kazi yao, ile kazi wanafanya, na unakuta vitu zetu tukipeleka pale wako na jicho mbaya ya kusema sisi kutuangalia. Kwa hivyo mimi nasema ile mambo wanazungumza kwa hii mjadala ni kitu ambaye ni aibu, na tunajua wakati ukatusi ulikuja ndio mwananchi ambaye ule ako masinani kule vijijini aweze kuisaidia, na sasa wanataka kuturundisha kule miaka mingi ambaye tulitoka. Kwa hivyo sasa, Bwana Spika, mimi napinga, na tuwaambie wanafikiria hawa ni kama wanatembea mbinguni tukiwa huku duniani. Nataka niwaambie sisi sote tuko hapa katika ulimwenguni, wakati wa kwenda mbinguni ni Mungu atakuja kutuchukua. Ya pili, kazi ya senator. Tumeona wale wajumbe wa majimbo mandogo, hata wiki jana nilisikia mjumbe mmoja akisema ati pesa ya MCA ikipitishwa hiyo pesa iwekwe kwa CDF. Ni aibu kwa sababu hata kwa heshima hawana heshima ya MCAs. Kwa hiyo, Bwana Spika, nasema wajumbe wa parliament wako na aibu, na hatuna anja na kazi zao, wasisikirie sisi umbaya. Ni ile kitu inatuunganisha. Sijui ni kwa sababu msara ni kitu kimoja, lakini nataka niwaambie kutoka leo majimbo 47 ile inaongozwa na senators na wale wengine ambaye wamekuwa appointed 20, tuko masenata 67. Kazi yetu ni kuangalia vile magavana wanafanya kazi, na tumeona wanafanya kazi ile inafaa, na ndio ukiangalia wiki jana tumesema majimbo letu makubwa counties government ipatiwe pesa bilioni 415, ndio ukatusi ule ulifanya kupandilishwe mambo ya majimbo, ndio watu wafanywe kazi ya kutosha. Kwa sababu kule vijijini magavana wako na kazi nyingi, na ndio tunawatetea waongezewe pesa. Wako na kazi ya kilimo, mambo ya hospitali, mambo mingi inatakikana kule, hata maji ya kulima na mambo ile ingine. Ndio mfanyikazi na ule mtu mwingine ako vijijini aweze kunisaidia, kwa sababu ndio analipa ile usuru. Kwa hivyo ni kitu kubwa sana ya aibu ya MP kuwa wanaingilia sisi na hatuna haja na pesa zao na tuwaingilie. Na wale watu walitengeneza katiba ya kusema maseneta wawe ni nyumba ya juu. Walikuwa na akili ya kutosha, kwa sababu Bwana Spika ndio, kwa sababu alikuwa anaangalia mwananchi amenyeshwa namna gani. Kwa hivyo ndio ukatusi ukakuja, na ndio tunaona sisi tunafanya kazi ile navaa. Na pia ule mwenye alitengeneza katiba ndio uliona alitunyima pesa hata ya project yoyote ndio tuweze kuangalia kazi kule vijijini. Bwana Spika, au wajumbe wamesoea vibaya sana, kwa sababu ukienda kaunti zingine unakuta hata wakati kuko na umati, either ni wa president ama ni wa governor ama ni umati wa aina gani, unakuta wale heshimiwa wakipatiwa masaa ya kuongea wanaongea masaa yote. Alafu ikifika wakati wa senator kuongea, unakuta hata deputy wa governor unakuta hata akupatie heshima. Na ingeomba Kenya mzima kule tuweze kuona vile tutavushiriwe mambo ambaye vile senator anafaa awe ako kiwango gani. Kwa kulingana katiba, kutoka kwa MP tunaenda kwa women rep na tunaenda kwa governor, alafu na governor mwenyewe aweze kuita deputy wake. Kwa hivyo maseneta wanadharuriwa, lakini wanatudharau, lakini kazi tumefanya ya kutosha ya kuangalia governor anafanya kazi gani. Kwa hivyo ningeomba pia wakituingilia hivyo, ningeomba wakati mwingine si tupitishe sheria kama tunafanya tunaangalia pesa ya county inafanya kazi na namna gani. Hata sisi tutatengeneza katiba ile pesa ya CDF tuwe tukiangalia, kwa sababu anajipiga kivua, kwa sababu hakuna mtu ako na uwezo wa kuangalia pesa ya CDF inafanya kazi namna gani. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nasema ni aibu kubwa sana ya our MPs, wanatudharau, lakini wanataka wajue sisi ni nyumba ya juu na sisi ni nyumba ya juu na our MPs ni nyumba ya chini. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, ningeomba turudi kwa constitution tena ndio tujue vile iko kutoka kwa MP kwenda kwa women rep na kwenda kwa senator alafu kwenda kwa governor. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nataka nikuambie hata kuna watu waesi kuongea kwa hii Senate vile tumenyanyaswa na wa MPs na pia na deputy. Na ndio naona hata tumepitisha vile tutakuwa tunafanya, kwa sababu upande wa governor, upande wa senator na upande wa MP ni kama shule ya msingi na shule ya sekondari. Sijaona mtu ametoka shule ya msingi akienda ya sekondari tusikie huyo mtoto ametoka shule ya sekondari arudi shule ya chini. Kwa hivyo nataka kuambia MPs wale wako na chuki na wale wako na kiburi, sio sisi tuambie waende kiti ya MP, wakitaka kiti wangoje miaka 5 ikuje ndio waweze kusimama kiti ya senator. Kwa hivyo nataka kusema kutoka siku ya leo katika Kenya mzima MP wote 349 wanjue senator tuko senator 66 na county 47, na tuko na uwezo wa kuangalia pesa ya county government vile governors wanafanya kazi. Kwa hivyo nataka niambie MP, singeona ni vizuri ati unasema pesa ya governor inakuliwa, kwani wewe ni senator. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, mimi naunga mkono, mimi napinga mara 100 mara 200 kwa hii kikaratasi, kwa hii mjandara, kwa sababu ni kitu iko na aibu katika Kenya yetu. Na ninataka kusema hakuna mtu mkubwa kama senator, ni senator mkubwa kuliko MP. Alafu kutoka kwa senator ni kuwa kwa governor. Asante Bwana Speaker, napinga mara 100. Ni mimi senator wa Embu County, daktari ambaye ni deputy party leader in Kenya Kwanza. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Order.
For 60 years, the African Development Bank Group has played an integral part in Africa's socio-economic transformation. From the 27th to the 31st of May 2024, the African Development Bank Group will host its 2024 annual meetings at the Kenyatta International Convention Center in Nairobi, Kenya. This year's theme will be Africa's Transformation, the African Development Bank Group, and Reform of the Global Financial Architecture. The high-level meetings will be hosted by the President of Kenya, His Excellency Honorable Dr. William Ruto, and the President of the African Development Bank Group, Akinwumi Adesina, and will convene African leaders, development partners, private sector actors, civil society organizations, youth, among other stakeholders. This event will be live on KBC Channel 1.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with your music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
And where's she?
She is a he, and he is here.
What kind of a criminal do you think you are? A peddler?
Yeah, that's perfect, eh? Kinyanjui, the drug smuggler.
But Kinyanjui are a crook, and it is not only one mistake. It is several. In fact, innumerable.
Cynthia, that is a little good word. In you what?
Mababu na mashosho wa zamani walipenda na katapila ma Facebook au Insta squeeze kabla ulale. Sipotuma text na emoji kwa M-Pesa utawachwa. Enzi gani yako follow kiko sana unapata mekwan follow. Ndio maana bado niko single sije nikaumiza wangu moyo. Enzi gani yako follow kiko sana unapata mekwan follow. Mimi bora niwe single, mimi sitaki kupendwa. Kwa mitandao maana wale wanaotangaza ndio ukombana kwa mitandao. Kuna wale wanaofeki kwa picha kiwakuta kuna vita. Mkewe analewa malaika na mume wake achita. Huyo mapenzi gani ya kufollow mkikosana unapata follow. Mimi naona bora nibaki single isije nikaumiza wangu moyo. Na mapenzi gani ya kufollow mkikosana